Hi, my name is Jean-Luc Pierite, and welcome to the first talk session of the Ancient Future Technologies track here at Global Community Bio Summit 5.0. Ooh. So we have a couple of shifts in programming today. Unfortunately, Julian is not able to be with us due to an emergency that he's dealing with at the moment. Also, we're going to have a recorded session from Xavier, and I believe Lucas might be in the chat right now. So we'll definitely have like any questions or any engagement. We'll definitely direct those to Lucas. But first up, we want to go ahead and give a big welcome to Emma Wright, who is going to be presenting her talk here. I believe that's homegrown. So Emma, are you there?
I am. Nice to meet you.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, stop sharing, and then Emma, if you can go ahead and share your screen, and then yeah, kick us off.
Great, amazing. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Okay, give me 2 seconds. Hey, can you just see that? Should be working all right. Yeah, great. Oh, here we go. Brilliant. Lovely to meet everyone. So I am a recent graduate at the Royal College of Art in London, and I've recently finished studying textile soft systems, which is a really interesting textile course. It kind of explains like the basic, or we go through future innovations and practices within soft robotics, bio-based applications and designs, sustainable systems, and that kind of that interesting grey space of textiles and that new murky area that we're all kind of interested in and evaluating and moving towards. Why are my slides not working? Come on. Brilliant. Okay, so Homegrown is actually my graduate project, and I'm really excited to introduce this to you guys. It's actually a bio-based collection of objects created as an alternative tool to interact with our digital products. It has been inspired by the lack of mindfulness regarding the sourcing and recycling of materials for technology. So this research project actually had been sourced from local materials within the UK and Ireland and created using traditional craft techniques. It uses ambient technology as a visual language to uncover the relationship between these objects and the user, created as like an alternative tool to interact with our digital products. So for me, this is really inspired by the lack of mindfulness regarding the sourcing and recycling of materials for technology. So this research project has been sourced from local materials, and yeah, I'm really excited to share this with you guys. So here we go. So this explores levels of care and how we interact with our daily interactions with the objects, creating that real deep understanding of longevity for the everyday object, in this case light switches, touchpads, etc. And this work explores local conductive and bio-based materials that could create speculative alternatives for the current multinational ingredient list within technologies today, replacing metal components and interfaces whilst reducing the material and the making process to a localized area, generating stories and thoughts and mindfulness towards the everyday objects in our home, and not treating the object as us and them, but cohabitating together and bringing mindfulness into our everyday interactions and environment. Brilliant. So I first really began my material journey through experimenting, refining through 50+ experiments before I was really happy with my own range of sort of materials. And this also included my own range of conductive biomaterials, with the carbon being sourced from cellulose and food waste. So for me, the next stage was really to develop these materials within a woven piece, and I really took local traditional tapestry techniques from the UK and France. One of them just being tabby weaving, which some of you might be familiar with, and others called tacte, which is a medieval technique, which you can see on my right, which allows me to drop warps to create this sort of matrix sensor, which you'll see shortly of how to, I made it to be an interactive piece. And ideally, the reason I was using wool was to actually move away from this plasticky feel a lot of the biomaterials have, albeit they are very beautiful once they're woven, but I really want to have that real tactile relationship, and hand looms especially allow me to really be able to manipulate these looms and hack them with my biomaterials and integrate new materials within these ancient techniques, you could say. So sourcing local materials for my sample development was really key for me. Not only does it reduce the carbon footprint of sourcing and manufacturing, but I also feel it creates a deeper relationship with your products. Understand the area and knowing producers have personally cared for and nurtured the material before it reaches you. So a key material I was exploring was the polysaccharides present within the seaweeds. And I found these actually fluctuated depending on the time of the year the seaweed was growing. So carrageenan and agar are designed to strengthen elasticity to the seaweed, so their percentage within the plant actually increased during the autumn and winter months due to the stronger winds and the waves around the shorelines. Actually, this research really inspired later how I can apply ideas of seasonal performance to my pieces. So how materials have behavioural characteristics that have been dictated by the time of the year it has been grown and where they have been grown. So for me, incorporating technology within these samples allowed touch interactions to become everyday outputs, such as switching on lights through to just general tactile objects. Can this ambient technology combined with textiles provide us with data to use if we wish to understand how our behaviours within the home can provide a closer relationship of care for these materials? So can they care for us by supporting our daily needs, but can we care towards them through data, sort of communicating through a visual language? And the idea of if we touch the touchpad so much, it would become unhappy and it would let us know for this visual communication, which I'll show you shortly. So I created stories about 3 different objects, and each one having their own needs that the user responded to and respected. So in this case, this touchpad really enjoyed resting, but it also really enjoyed being interacted by the user. It can withstand long hours of use, however, there is still a limit. If the user has been continuously at work with no breaks, the touchpad becomes a little bit unsettled and actually in need of a break. So you can see the visual changes to the left-hand side. So it sends a reminder to the user when that limit has been breached. So this object creates a gentle reminder to be more mindful of the objects and space around you and how you can interact with them without taking advantage of either or. So the care relationship is reciprocal, with the touchpad's needs for a break reflecting the needs of the user. So for me, I see the future of my samples using seasonal performance with the biomaterials to initiate ideas around co-design with nature and its seasons, and moving away from universal design practices and applying concepts that orientate around a community's local materials with traditional making techniques that have come from local communities and their crafts-based skills. So essentially for me, homegrown is not about generating a hero solution or idea to save the planet, but stimulating alternative materials, methods and stories of interaction to create more mindful approaches towards the everyday object and technologies that we use. So can we do this through a more active form of care? One that revolves around the everyday objects that we work with and use, respecting our materials and developing habits to form a balanced cohabitation and being mindful of the interactions that we have within our environment, whether that's outside or inside the home. So at the moment, homegrown has expanded, which is really exciting. We're really expanding to a really lovely team, as you can see here, and everyone's kind of brought a diverse range of skills and backgrounds to really push the next research development within homegrown. And the reason the team's expanded, we've recently received funding through the Terra Carta Foundation, which is under the Sustainable Markets Programme here in the UK. And so yeah, with this, keep in touch, and we hope to have some really interesting developments over the next few months on where we're going to take this through. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. It's really lovely work.
Okay.
Just letting people know. Oh, so Amanda is sending in a question here. Does touch always degrade materials over time? Or is there any amount of reciprocal touch that supports maintenance? Thinking of pearls that benefit from skin.
Yeah, sure, that's a really interesting question. So definitely some materials, you'll see stone steps that are 1,000 years old probably, or wooden steps that have worn away through touch and impact. some materials, definitely pearl is a really good example, and wool itself has what is the wax? Is it lanolin, I believe? Yeah, I think it's lanolin, or I might have said it incorrectly. So basically, wool comes with a natural oil, which is really similar to, well, something similar to what we have on our skin and our hair, and that protects it. And unfortunately, when wool gets bleached or goes through very unsustainable dyeing processes, that gets leached out of it. So actually, a lot of the wool I use, actually all of it has its natural, keeps its natural color. And I only apply tannins from onion skins and anything that has a high tannin for natural dyeing. So I try not to use metal mordants in any of my dyeing at all. And actually, lanolin, thank you so much. I knew it was something like that. You know what I meant. So actually, the more I touch this wool, and because it's quite thick, stretchy wool, it maintains its springiness, its vibrantness because of that. However, that does depend on different sheeps. So the sheeps I've used are Romney and Shetland sheeps in the UK. Yeah.
Cool. So Natalie is asking, how do you use the algae in your fabric?
Yeah, so I don't use algae, I use seaweed. So seaweed is a macroalgae, and if you're thinking of like the little green blooms, that's microalgae. So then I use polysaccharides, which is a sugar extraction from seaweeds, and I actually just use that within the biomaterial itself, and it actually has really, depending on the seaweed and how it's extracted and cured, etc., it has really great gelling properties, and that allows me to almost combine my carbon from food waste and turn it into a material. So it stops becoming powder form and into like a malleable material to weave and cut and sew, etc.
Awesome. And then Emma, you're going to be rejoining us for the workshop.
Yes, I
So
am.
definitely looking for more to some more fun. Excuse me.
Yes.
Later in the workshop. So definitely everybody, you'll have chances to connect with Emma then. Looking forward to that. Also, I want to make sure, is Revathi still around? Okay. Not hearing. I'm going to go ahead. Sophia, I believe you're going to, Xavier's kind of swapping between rooms, but he does have a pre-recorded presentation. So Sophia, if you can, so if we can spotlight Sophia, yeah, there we go, and get that going.
Sure. Well, give me 1 second. Okay, so well, I will present the pre-recorded presentation of Xavier. So well, let's go.
Hello everyone. I hope that you're enjoying the Global Community Biosummit 5.0 conference. I'm Xavier-Lewis Palmer, presenting a talk based on a paper via myself and my colleague Lucas Potter. Today, we are going to be talking to you all about the importance of cataloging and defending biological assets in terms of biocybersecurity defense. This will be a fast and limited presentation geared for discussion in Slack. Be sure to save hard-hitting questions for that platform. Thank you. That being said, let's proceed with our background. We've both received practical and doctoral education in varied aspects of biomedical engineering. Further, we have a combined background in human factors and cybersecurity. We intend to use this background to help people make more secure designs for themselves, their organizations, and communities. Everyone here ought to be familiar with biology. Biocybersecurity is an extension. It is an intersectional field that concerns biological assets that interact with elements of cybersecurity. Biocybersecurity is here and of increasing importance due to the increased amount of physiologically and biologically relevant devices and increased rate of digitalization of biologically relevant data, allowing for new types of vulnerabilities. Now to start, we'll discuss the Global South and the importance of biocataloging for communities. When you think about biological assets, your perceptions are likely colored by your background. For example, a hospital worker might think of equipment or drugs. A security worker might think of bioweapons or biosafety. A conservationist may think of a rare species or means of securing them. Who's right? Well, why aren't all of them? Because they are. Here is a quick list of some biological assets that are important to keep in mind. Some are obvious. There's some that are semi-obvious, and there are many that are non-obvious that are very well so biological assets as well. Concerning the Global South, the big concept here is that from a biological asset point of view, they have biological assets that are extracted disproportionately for the benefit of the Global North. For many Global South nations, resources are underdocumented while processing facilities and protectors are few. We must continue to change that. Here's a quick listing of the biomedical resources that nearly all countries have access to. Countries in the Global South tend to have reduced access to these kinds of resources, but that might make them all the more important. For example, if you have fewer practicing medical doctors per capita, each one is more important to the stability of your community. Now, we get into the parts of the problem that most cybersecurity professionals are likely familiar with. You have a resource. Like any technical resource you work with, how do you keep it safe? How do you protect it? And what could be the most difficult problem? How do you get people to understand how important it is to protect these resources and information? There are many ways to illustrate attacks on biological resources, but we'll use two cases of exploits for this. We'll start with an exploration of exploits of academic denial of service and trust in medicine. To begin, we need to define a medical care facility. Here, this means any place that provides medical care to people. It can vary in scope, like the number of patients, the variety of care options, or the level of medical treatment available. Nonetheless, the medical care facility always needs to have trust. Even a local medicine person counts as a medical care facility. Though this person may not have the abilities of a hospital, they may have more trust due to the nature of their past with the community, and thus be a more effective renderer of care in some instances. Now, part of the fun in BCS is pretending to be the bad guys. Let's say that someone didn't like a medical facility, either because it competes with theirs, serves a population they don't like, or because they just happen to want to. How could they sow distrust in that facility? Well, the easiest way to do that is to prevent other people from using it. For example, if you went to your favorite restaurant and you couldn't get a seat for hours, would you trust that you would be able to eat there? Next, we need to understand what a denial of service attack is. In cybersecurity, a denial of service attack is when a computer system requests something from another computer at such a high frequency or volume that the computer giving the information cannot keep up with the requests. This isn't inherently a problem. After all, if it's a site that no one cares about, there's a chance that no one would even notice. For example, if one performed a denial of service attack on AOL.com, it might not be noticed for weeks. But what if one wanted to use this idea to prevent medical care, or to reduce the belief that a certain medical facility was competent to deliver medical treatment? Could one perform a denial of service in the hospital? The answer is not just yes. There's multiple ways to do it, and it's important to think of these possibilities to plan for effective defense, grim as the subject may be. The first method of a biomedical denial of service is relatively simple. This would involve sending people to a hospital in such volume or frequency that a medical care facility could not physically handle them. There's not really a cost-effective way to do this. One route is to make a lot of people sick or injured, and for various reasons, those will not be discussed further here. Second, and more easily, if they have online services that one could perform a denial of service on that, and they can make it harder for doctors to retrieve information on their patient, that is also a route that's open. For example, if a hospital's or other medical care facilities' information is kept on a remote data server, one can make the doctor work without the medical history of the patient. This would be especially aggravating if there were language barriers or other impediments to understanding the patient completely. There's a third route, and this is where it gets additionally interesting. One could DOS the flow of information to the hospital. This can produce complex consequences owing to high incidences of infectious diseases and understudied diversity in many parts of the Global South. For example, diseases that exist, some may have multiple symptoms that can appear differently in different patients. Doctors must be kept constantly updated on this new information. But where do medical professionals get their information? This is typically in the form of peer publications or academic publications like journals. So let's see, can one take down a site? Sure, that wouldn't be too difficult, but some publications still release their their material in paper versions. So if word from the journal can still get out, how can one still influence it? Here, academic disruption is then explored. If one can't beat a medical establishment, one can swamp them with so much stuff that no one's sure who's correct on sensitive matters. In this case, if one wants to reduce trust, all one has to do is to optimally submit purposely wrong information to the journal. Journals in the Global South are in a precariously unique situation. For many, there exists a gap in prestige, and many often don't have the resources or connections to get the best review for any given paper. At the end of the day, after one's due diligence, all they can do is trust the submitter that they aren't lying when they have insufficient resources to replicate or analyze results. This is especially important to keep in mind because well-sourced journals and conferences have also fallen for false publications. For instance, SciGen is a program that can create fake computer science publications using a machine learning model. Further, several sociological and computer publication sources have fallen prey to fake publications. And predatory publishers have shown that it's way too easy to get any idea published. The imbalance of power and state of academia opens the door for researchers in the global north to increasingly publish data that does not reach stricter requirements of publishing there to publications in the global south. This in turn could lead to more inaccurate information being in the hands of medical practitioners in the global south. And of course, for the one of a nail, this could significantly harm those nations, some of which are in the worst possible position for dissemination of information. One of the many implications is that we have serious work to do in the hopes of reasonable defense. To review, many communities in the global south have unique biology, aspects, phenomena, and values. They are open to novel hybrid attacks this day and age, and some of these attacks are quite simple to implement. The tell of how bioresources ought to be guarded is sometimes not an easy question. Nonetheless, we must work to secure these resources as best we can. We may go about it by increasing investments in biologically relevant education, increasing investments in community biopractices in partnership with academic spaces, establishing tactical reserves for certain resources, as cataloging of underdocumented resources underway. Additionally, we need to protect indigenous groups and respect their stewardship and knowledge. We need to increase protections for researchers, and critical infrastructure. We also need to pursue legislation that further penalizes and criminalizes fraudulent behavior. Overall, we need to consider the biosphere as a meaningful domain of defense. For the sake of time, please spark discussion in the Global Community Bio Summit 5.0 Slack. Questions can be further sent to biosphere@partomail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. If you have any question to Xavier, you can contact him on Slack.
Yeah, I'm gonna just do really quickly. Especially the relevance to ancient future technology, and I wanted to just kind of bring forward Corinne and Allison, who can, we're sharing some comments, and for myself, it's very important, especially for indigenous communities on the front lines that are trying to preserve the biodiversity and traditional knowledge, and thinking about intellectual property issues. And so I just wanted to kind of have just some brief thoughts from either Allison or Corinne.
I just saw Allison defer to me, but I was going to defer to you. But I can just share a little bit.
You first, Corinne.
Allison?
You first, Corinne.
Oh, okay. Just for context, my family is in Hawaii, Maui and Oahu, and there's been such a huge issue with just devastation of plants and land, and that goes hand in hand with people. So once you destroy the native plants and the animals, you're also destroying the people and traditions. And in a lot of places, also in the global south, as was mentioned, when you're not engaging people equally and you take up all the land for mass ag, which happened in Hawaii with sugarcane and pineapple, and then you bring in pesticides as well, and you put in golf courses that use pesticides that run into the ocean, you're killing the fish and all the coral. You have to build a trust. You have to start from a center of building trust. There's a huge issue right now in Mauna Kea with building a new observatory. It's an amazing global observatory that's a collaboration with many countries. And many people don't understand why the local and why the Hawaiians don't want it. You know, Hawaiians, it doesn't matter what great things it's doing for science. They're building on the island of Hawaii, which used to be mostly coalwood forests. Tourists go there now to ride and on horses on plains because they cut down all the koa trees. These are hardwoods that take a long time to grow. The US government has bombed many of the islands. My dad remembers people being dragged off islands for bombing practice, just decimated. And so how do you build that trust is part of, I completely agree with what there was an asset that was listed on one of the lists about the asset of trust and community. And so, yeah, that's such a huge part. You can't just say, look at this amazing science. You have to first address what has happened to these communities. You have to acknowledge that first before you even launch into all the benefits. It's just a small part.
Yes. Alison, do you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Corinne. Just to agree with everything you said, I'd also say the other problem we have is the knowledge is being stolen, as you mentioned, but we also have the problem that when it can be brought forward and published, it's not being published by people who don't look like the conventional folk. So there's a lot of knowledge there. Yeah, I can try and put some links in the chat, but there's so much here. We all need to start trying harder because the truth and the knowledge comes from people who don't necessarily look like who you'd expect. And that's where our real solutions are going to come from. This is what the future looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so definitely there's a lot that's associated with all of this. So we're definitely looking forward to a very good in-depth conversation in the Slack channel and going forward. So thank you both, and thank you to Sophia, thank you to Xavier and Lucas. And we're going to go ahead and move forward. I'm going to call up Revathi, who's going to talk to us about ancient microbial technologies. Can we spotlight Revathi?
Hi everybody, a very good evening to one all present there. This is Revathi from Chennai, India. So may I start with my presentation? Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. And are you able to share your screen? Oh, there you go. Okay.
Can you people see my screen? Is it visible? Am I audible? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
And everything is visible.
So my topic is about ancient microbial technology. So I'm going to today speak about fermentation technology. I hope time is there is about it is 3 p.m. there, right? 3 p.m. there. But in India now it is 1:35 a.m. So I'm talking in the morning. And I hope all people have finished your lunch, and within another 1 or 1.5 hours, you'll be taking your evening snacks. So I think this gives you some flavor and makes you to enjoy your snacks. So we'll move ahead with the slides. So fermentation technology. So when we compare to the other ancient microbial technologies, there are so many technologies which involves the production of your antibiotics, your food products made out of fermentation. But one of the oldest existing technology using microbes is fermentation technology. So human beings, when they start to know to make fire, followed by tool making and cooking, they started the practice of the habit of implementing the fermentation. So the first person who experimentally proved that the fermentation of grapefruit by yeast is French chemist Louis Pasteur. He is also called as the father of modern microbiology, and he also identified the another concept called pasteurization to prevent the spoilage of milk. So there are so many fermented products which are available all over the world, like bread, sauerkraut bread, which is made from your either wheat or all-purpose flour by using yeast as a leavening agent. Then sauerkraut, it is nothing but the fermentation of cabbage. Kimchi salad is the spiciest form of sauerkraut. followed by dill pickles, best method to preserve the cucumber pickle by using fermentation, and the most important thing, the production of beverages by fermentation concept like wine, beer, champagne, rum, gin, whiskey, and brandy. So based on the concept of fermentation. So today I'm going to add flavor, or what to say, some more interesting things about fermentation, but with respect to Indian point of view. So Indian fermented foods. So there are 7 types of fermented foods available in India. So as you can see in these slides, most predominant one is made from cereals or pulses, and then sweets and snacks made from for cereals and pulses. We can speak about idli, dosa, neer dosa, appam, which we can take it as a form of pancake. And on fermenting curd, on preparing curd, we'll be getting buttermilk. From that, we'll be used to prepare kadhi, pulu, more korambu, like that. So it's nothing but a solid, semi-solid gravy-like dish, which we can mix it with rice and have it as a main ingredient. So fermented sweets and snacks, for example, jalebi. So jalebi is made out of your white urud dal, from which we can it undergoes fermentation. We'll get that sweet, and made from milk. It's curd, then chuhu, chirpin, like that. And from fruits also you can, but from vegetables, as I mentioned earlier, it's sauerkraut, and from fruits it's gundrak, sinki, korisa. So there are also meat products which undergoes fermentation, and we'll get the dishes mentioned in these slides. And from pulses, the most important dishes, dokla, kaman, madra, wadi, begantu, and havijar. So I'm going to present some of the most important Indian foods which are available in southern part of India. So as I'm living in Chennai, India, so this is the southernmost part of India, South India. So I'm going to speak about those important fermented foods. So idli, it's a rice cake. So the origin is from India, subcontinent. It's a popular breakfast food. You can see in both southern part of India, also in Sri Lanka. And this idli has been awarded as one of the best breakfast foods by WHO, because of its nutrient content. It's high in carbohydrate. It's baked. It's a baked food, and it undergoes the concept of steaming. And the preparation involves the mixture of black lentils and your raw rice. So fermentation takes for about 8 hours. So when you substitute under steaming, you will get very good, soft, spongy, savory rice cake. It's good to eat, and it is served with a combination of coconut chutney and also with sambar, which we get prepared using your vegetables and the soaked tamarind with the help of sambar powder. So you will be serving this idli with that combination. So next comes the dosa. So this is prepared from the same idli batter, which takes a fermentation for about 8 hours. It's nothing but a thin pancake. Its origin is also from India, especially from South India, and it contains the black lentils and the rice. It's very crispy in appearance, and when compared to idli, dosa is the most favorite food for kids in India, in South India especially. So it's also served with, as I mentioned earlier, chutney and sambar. It will be very delicious, and it will be utterly butterly delicious. So when we have this food, and coming to the next one, doklas. So dokla is nothing but a vegetarian culinary dish that's mainly found in the Indian state of Gujarat and parts of adjacent states. So it is also made from fermentation, from legumes like chickpea, pigeon pea, and urud and rice. And as idli and dosa, it is also taken as a breakfast, as a main course, and it is served with side dish like mint chutney or coconut chutney. It is when idli, dosa, and dokla, when compared to all these three, idli and doklas have high nutrient value because it's a baked food, not fried food. But dosa, it is cooked with oil. When compared to those three, the dokla and idli have high nutrient content, and it's really, dokla contain high protein value. It's really good for health. All these food, idli, dosa, dokla, increases your good gut microbiota and boosts your immunity and gives you good health. So coming to the curd.
Okay, Revathi, sorry. And I know that it's 1:30 there. Just letting you know that you have 1 minute before we have to move on to the next talk. So if you could just wrap it up really quickly. And
There's
thank
only
you
one more
for
slide, sir.
staying up late for us.
Only one more slide. So speaking about curd, it's nothing but when you subject milk to fermentation by the action of lactobacillus bacteria, a gram-positive, it is a good gut microbe which increases and boosts your immunity. So when the process you called as coagulating milk, and you will get the curd as the daily product, curd as the final product, and it's really good for your health. It has high nutrient value. It improves your digestion. It's really enhances the level of the gut microbes level in the stomach. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's very, very interesting.
I hope you all understand. Sorry, I hope you all like my presentation. I may sound too fast, but I have to finish within 5 minutes, so I was very fast.
Yeah, if you can definitely later on this morning for you, if you can join the Slack and give us some recipes at least, so that people can perhaps like experiment with some of the fermentation at home. I think it would be very, very interesting for folks. So, but thank you very much for sharing, and thank you once again for staying up so late for us.
It's my pleasure. Last year also I participated in Global Community Summit. Last year I participated as a bio artist. So this year also on Friday I gave a talk on bio art. So I'm happy to be a part of Global Bio Community Summit, and thank you all for giving me this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we're gonna hear from Aliki.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. I'll try to. Perfect. And I think you should be able to see my screen also, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So thank you, first of all, for having me here. I'm here as a little bit of an outsider. So I'm not a scientist, or at least in the traditional sense of it, but I will guide you through a journey that I have been taking myself more intuitively, and now I'm helping other people to take. And this is the one that is connecting nature to human being, to society, to business. And when I talk about nature and business together, usually more people are like, how are these two related? So allow me to guide you there. We'll start from the very basics that you all know, but I just want to remind you of the very, very, very start of everything that is around us. And that is that the four elements are indeed the essence of life. All animals, plants, non-living objects, energies are a combination of these elements, as of course we are. Everything has its own unique blend of the four elements. Everything that has substance has earth in it. Everything that flows and or has feelings has water in it. Everything that involves sound, thinking, or communication has air in it. And everything that has energy has fire in it. I'm very glad that in this community, I don't really need to talk so much about this circle of how nature actually uses the four elements to circulate all the energies around it and create a balance. But for many people, that's not very obvious. Hopefully here it's not very necessary to talk about that. So I will just pass it on and then just put it here as a reminder and start connecting you that with all the other four steps. So let's go from water, air, fire, and earth as elements and the hydrosphere, atmosphere, biosphere, and geosphere into how that connects to the human beings. And it says the primordial elements construct the person. Imbalancing those elements are the cause of ill health. What would that mean? Let's start translating. Let's start translating water into emotional energy, emotional body, and how happy we are. Let's start translating air into our mental body, mental energy, and how focused we are. Let's start translating fire into our spiritual energy, and what if we know what is our purpose, our passion. And last on the physical energy, which is the most obvious, how healthy we are and our bodies, and how these connect to the four elements that we were seeing before. So we're going from nature to the human. And that might be very obvious because we are part of nature. And then let's start seeing way further into our societies. So how all of these elements that are classically described as fire, water, earth, air may impact our mental health and our societies as an effect of that. Oops, sorry, I jumped one. So how would it be if we start seeing our communities and our societies through the lenses of how nature is creating ecosystems, and not believe that we are so separate and creating something completely new, but start listening a little bit more of how nature creates balance in ecosystems that have been operating for billions and billions of years. And maybe are a good example of how we can create sustainable futures. So I'll just like to guide you from the 4 elements we saw in nature and in ourselves into the 4 elements, how they represent themselves in our societies, which is simply many of us put together, right? That's what it is. So the earth is manifesting as the financial capital and everything has to do with structures. The water is manifesting as the social capital and everything has to do with networks. The air is manifesting as the intellectual capital and everything has to do with knowledge. And the fire is manifesting as spiritual capital and everything has to do with purpose and mission. And what if we could start using all of that as a lenses, as a framework, and building up of all of those elements from a greater capacity of physical energy that will build the base for getting better at whatever it is that we want to improve. Because nature keeps doing that all the time, so why couldn't we? And that's how we start connecting it into business. And we start seeing of what would be these 4 forces if we start implementing them and seeing them in all our projects. And don't take me wrong, business is just a way of expressing our purpose in the world. It can be anything else. It can be a project, it can be your artwork, it can be your PhD. The natural forces represent themselves everywhere. It's a fractal system. So then we're going once again, how are of these 4 energies manifesting? And that would be earth as organization, water as communication, air as innovation, and fire as risk management. And if any of you have ever been involved in a project or leading a project or research, they know that these 4, they keep manifesting. And if you're missing one of those, usually your system, your ecosystem starts trembling a bit. So we came up with a question, and that's practically what we're going to be testing out. What if business could imitate nature? What we do if we don't believe that these are 2 different concepts and they come together? And that's really what we're going to do. During winter, and I'm inviting everybody who's interested in that to just write me after the call, we're going to be selecting 16 initiatives. And that's because 16 is like a 4x4, meaning all the system will be fractal. And we're going to start doing 3 steps. First of all, each organism, each cell, which is each person, right, will be able to assess themselves in all the 4 capitals, so in all the 4 pillars, and keep seeing how they are progressing into their mental, physical, social, and spiritual capacities. That becoming from a cell to an organ, we will start seeing inside this small community of 16 people that we're going to be looking at, how you can start exchange resources as if there were different cells exchanging resources. So each one can be supported the way that they need at every given moment, the way that nature does it practically. And going further, as the 3rd step will be that becoming an organism, a mega-organism, and how you can preserve each cell and their sovereignty. So the individual initiatives remain themselves the way they are, the way they want to operate, but with the help of the other cells and the resources, they can operate as a person, but with the power of the many behind them. So we start creating literally an organism, and how this could imitate the way nature uses the flow of the elements to extract all qualities and place them exactly where they're supposed to be. So that's our call, and that's our vision. We do believe a lot And I'm finishing Jean-Luc in 2 slides.
Okay, thank you.
I saw you there.
Call to action. I just want to be sure that we're mindful of the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, because I cannot see the time when I'm sharing. So perfect that you did, actually. So our vision is that we believe that together we are abundant and that everybody should live their true potential. The mission is to support the ones who are shaping the world. This is all the initiatives that are looking at the better future. And the way we do it is by applying ancient wisdom, and I love the name of this session, actually, it was like spot on, to modern business, and be able to activate the potential while restoring the natural balance. That's what we're doing. That's everybody is interested in that. I'm trying to share, yeah. If you are interested in what we're doing, you can just connect with me. Sorry for stop sharing very early, it was stuck my computer. Just email me or join us in our website and let's talk about connecting nature to our future and our present. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And if you can take some of the conversation to the Slack channel, I'm sure a lot of people will be very interested in answering the call to action here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna turn now to Anais Murakami.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
And Anais, you have the distinct honor of wrapping us up for this session, so go for it.
I have what? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh, you're our last talk for this session.
Oh, okay, yeah. So thank you so much for everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to be talking with everyone today. So my name is Anais Murakami and my artist name is Anais Karenin. So today I talk about Bioancestor. There is disrupt mythological and scientific boundaries. It's related to some questions that we started to talk in the chat now. So it is also, oh, it's not going. So it is a part of my research in my PhD. And I'm doing visitor research in Japan and Waseda University, and I'm doing my PhD in Department of Visual Arts in University of São Paulo in Brazil. And also I'm curator and co-director of BioLilo Lab, that is bioart in the tropics. So it's a laboratory of bioart independent, located in São Paulo. And we are focused on these fields of art and science, specifically raising this knowledge about the tropics natural heritage. So the idea is to question how its different approach, how science and art works together in this different context of, as we said, like South, global South and tropics, and this many ways of calling this part of the world. There's really so many questions in there. So a specific context that is since 14 years old, I'm studying medicinal herbs from traditional and popular culture that came from my ancestors from Stadon, that is like a specific environment, it's like really dry environment. Interland is more located in northeast of Brazil, so more specific in the states of Ceará and Minas Gerais. And the strong question that comes from this space is the idea of resilience, not just environmental resilience because it's dry space, so it's difficult for every different kind of beings to live in there, but also the symbolical resilience that many traditional indigenous knowledge survivor in this part of the Brazil, because like in daily life of people, because of it's not interest space for government. So there's not so many investment, and this situation of abandonment brings to people this kind of resilience of cultural heritage as well. So this context, I don't need to talk so much about it, but just to say from where I'm bringing this historical context of how science come to Brazil, and this context because it is located in colonialism approach, and a naturalistic way of representing nature and representing tropics that evolved to idea of classic science and modern idea of individual. So in this process of colonialism, it like put for outside the idea of multiple perspectives and cosmovisions of Amerindian people and mythological perspectives, and it brings the multi-specifics and symbiotics ideas, like it's into it the perspectivism of Amerindian people, and it is expressed through the connectivity and interdependency in their practice. So I'm bringing this context to talk about the idea of symbiosis with ancestor ideas. So I don't need to contextualize as well, like symbiosis. So I just bring this part of like the idea of the words. There's not just one word, but many words that are constructed, made of relationships and interdependency. There's part of the approach of Donna Haraway of symbiosis. There's so many, but I bring this to talk about like how many traditional cosmovisions bring this idea in ancestors' perspectives. So the idea of experts in everywhere, but not like in anthropology, it's called animism, but it's so much more than the definition of animism, the idea of coexistence and making kindness in traditional cosmovisions of many perspectives and traditional cosmovisions. So in some artworks, I worked in this field of the idea of anxiety and ancestor, bringing to this scientific approach, there is related idea of ancestor to evolution. And talking specifically about the herbs, this context, like it brings us to the idea of cyanobacterias. And another way I'm bringing the idea of mythology, also talking about herbs, there is like in mythology, the ancestor is the herb spirits. So the relation with herb spirits brings you to the idea of communication. And this communication is constructed, directed between you and the herb. It's not like knowledge that is made some methods of intermediated methods, but it's direct communication between the body and the environment and the elements around you. So I did some artworks that is related to this kind of different approach of science and mythology, bringing this knowledge. So for example, this artwork, there's called forest. I extract the color, the pigments of the plants until they become transparent. So it's a methodology really used in pharmacognosy. But I learned these methodologies through traditional methods of doing herb medicines. So like I saw some point of connection, and I used this to bring some questions into my artwork. I don't have time to explain all the concept of the artwork, but you can see in my website later. It's just a general view of my research. Other artwork also that discuss this idea of mythology is this Great Rainbow, because it's about, there is a virus, a giant virus that's called Tubon Virus. It's called the idea of ancestral virus. It questioned the idea of life or non-life through the existence of this virus that was discovered in the alkaline lake in Brazil. And they named the virus into Tubon Virus. And Tubon is an ancestral entity of Tupi-Guarani cosmology. So in this artwork, I discussed this relation of how mythology and science approach the idea of ancestors through this idea of relationship with unvisual elements, a non-visual element and non-vision existence. So as well, this artwork is quite complex. It's a sound art, like there's some rules to construct the sound based on the Tubon. We were born in the heart of foreigner. It is a Tupi-Guarani prophecy. So I also will not explain so deeply this artwork, but it's just some ways of expressing the idea of the question that I'm trying to bring in this discussion. It's part of the discussion of my PhD. That is how like science is open to be influenced by ancestral technologies and methodologies. Not just bring the science to discuss the mythological, like not just bring science to use some tools to explain and to help the mythology and the mythological and cosmovision perspectives, but how we are open to change our methodologies in science, bringing the idea of ancestral perspectives and respecting the epistemologies as understanding it as a really method of construction of knowledge in the world. So into it, I'm bringing also the Japanese scientist, that is Imanishi Kinji. So he proposed the idea of intuition as a method. It's interesting how I'm finding so many connections between some ancestral approach and from Amerindians ancestral approach, and also some Japanese ancestral ways of views that is also called some animism, Japanese animism, but I think also there's deeper than it. So I am finding so many points of connection to bring this idea of how we can change our perspective about everything, not just constructing new technologies, but changing the way we think to do a technology, to do a way of living in this world. So I bring in the idea of mixing and breaking hierarchy and coexisting. So I think just in this way, we can really change our perspective and our approach with the things, not just in some philosophical way, but it's in a.
Did Anais freeze on everybody, or is that Corinne was also saying that? Okay, and we are kind of like close to time. We're just like enraptured by everything that everybody has shared. Thank you so much to Anais. Thank you to Aliki. Thank you to, oh my goodness, Revathi, Xavier, Sophia, Corinne, Allison, thank you for sharing as well. And oh my goodness, going all the way back to the beginning, am I right? Everybody, so good. That was talks one, everybody.
Today, during these workshop sessions, we have amazing speakers, and we have Engma Wright, Tanisha Kumar, and Anjali Singh, Cristobal Gonzalez. Unfortunately, Julian has some issues to join us. We hope he could join us, but if not, we are going to distribute a little bit more time for our current speakers today. So I would love to start with Super Engma Wright. He's from the Royal College of Art, and well, she's going to share us about a very important topic today is weaving with biomaterials. Welcome, Super Engma.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. 2 seconds, my computer's just been a little bit delayed. Should be okay. Yeah, great, we're good. I've also brought my iPhone in to share. So I was wondering if it's maybe to spotlight that in about 10 minutes or so then people can kind of see what I'm doing with my hands. It's a little bit easier. But yeah, lovely to meet everyone. I'm just going to first share just a presentation for about 10 minutes just to show you how where I find my biomaterials and how I make them. I couldn't really show you in the kitchen today, but what I'm going to do show you after those 10 minutes is different ways of cutting and slicing them, and then different traditional ways of tapestry weaving with them as well. So I will just share my screen. Thank you. Brilliant. Great. So yeah, my name's Emma. I'm from the Royal College of Art, and I really became obsessed found out biomaterials during my MA there, and I became really obsessed with the potential opportunities that these could have, and I really wanted to move these away from what we call at Royal College our gloop projects. We just kind of make a gloopy mess of something. I really wanted to show, okay, what are their behavioural properties if you change X, Y, and Z when you're making these. So what I was really keen about these guys was actually making conductive biomaterials, and I had a presentation earlier and I kind of walked you through my initial thinking with that. So my background within biomaterials started off with just playing around with lots of different seaweed-based materials, and I'll tell you in a minute why I was really keen with seaweeds. But yes, my main key work right now is weaving with conductive biomaterials and how to really make these potential solidified opportunities within future technologies. So we're doing a lot of R&D right now with these materials to make them more commercialized, let's say. So yeah, so the carbon's from food waste and cellulose waste, and this is also using a polysaccharide from the seaweeds around Cornwall, which is the south of England, and around the northern coast of Ireland as well. So yeah, some little tests in there, initial works. Okay, so at the moment we're exploring lots of different types of seaweeds, and seaweeds are really interesting because they produce something called a polysaccharide, and our main ones are red and brown seaweeds that we get these from, and a polysaccharide is a really great gelling gel base. It's a sugar molecule, and when you add heat and water you kind of get a really nice jelly. So a lot of vegan gelatin is actually from this, and a lot of food industry uses these as well. And the reason I love seaweeds is because they are regenerative. So I harvest my seaweeds on a 4-month cyclic base, so it's around protected shoreline around Cornwall, and that's kind of like round the bottom down here. This little illustration shows you, for instance, where the red seaweed is in the UK and its population of brown seaweed as well. You can kind of see that poking through. So yeah, so because it's regenerative, you basically cut the seaweed and when it's 4 to 6 months old, and then you come back there 4 months later and the baby seaweeds basically have just grown back. So there's no GM involved. It's just purely a natural cycle that happens along the shoreline. And so we're not using land mass, and it's kind of keeping those biodiversities and happy fish and all of that jazz in their area. Of course, there are some parts of the world which I really do want to touch on that do unfortunately over harvest this. So if you are looking into polysaccharides, please make sure they do come from a good source, because unfortunately we find in most things things are over harvested, and they're not done through a regenerative cycling sustainable system of harvesting. Unfortunately, they just harvest and harvest again, and it completely dredges the shoreline. Anyway, so these are the 4 seaweeds that I look at. So carrageenan and dulse you guys might have heard of before, and then rack and knotted kelp. So I'm not sure, there'd be probably a mixture of similar species, if not the same species, around a shoreline near you. So yeah, we usually just go to the shoreline. You can see in my top right corner, go along, cut the little seaweeds out. We know how big the seaweed is and how mature that is. There's a point above the anchor where the seaweed hooks onto the rock, is a very good point, about 3-4 inches above that, to slice off so it can keep regrowing again. And these are just some examples of conductive biomaterials that I've made from these seaweeds, and how I've kind of moved them into like potential electronics and sounds as well. Cool. Just a quick overview on biomaterials as well. There's a huge thing out there at the moment, and actually this is actually technically what comes under biomaterials at the moment. So polysaccharides are to your far left, and these really vary going down. Proteins, a lot of you probably aware of, especially in regards to animals and plants, like bamboo and cotton is very present. Flax and hemp and dew are called bast fibers, and they're fantastic. We need to get those going a bit more in the commercial area. And then you've got more like polyphenols, lipids, polyester biosynthetics, and specialty polymers as well. So it's really, really huge. So biomaterials is not necessarily you just make it at home. It is a lot of the stuff is actually being used in commercial contexts. And actually, because something has bio in front of it doesn't actually necessarily mean it's good. So unfortunately, some of the biosynthetic polymers do also use very heavy energy and come from petroleum-based sources as well, depending how they've been synthesized from those, which gets a little bit complicated, but we won't go too deep into that one today. We're just going to look at the nice stuff. So this is just some of the materials that I've made before. So the polysaccharides I have to extract from the seaweeds, and that has to be done in the lab as it's quite an intensive process. And all the waste can go back into composting, or actually some of the kelp we reuse for dyeing our wool. So it can be a quite closed system. We are looking at reducing the amount of energy that goes into extraction and to carbonization as well for the carbon. But what I'm showing you right now is just a mixture of different polysaccharides from the seaweed and how I've changed the mixture for different behavioral properties. So this one right now is paper and paper characteristics, sorry, and it holds folding and concertina effects really, really well. So if we have more time, I'll show you a little whip up demo in the kitchen, but I think the video kind of gives you an idea what's going on. So yeah, again, common types, really, really interesting. Actually, I just love to know the history of the materials that I'm using. So in this case, red algae, red seaweed, agar, everyone has heard of this. I assume everyone has heard of this. It's superhuge in Japan and Asia, and I love the little story of how agar was found, how sort of the Japanese emperor and his royal party were stuck in the mountains, and this innkeeper offered him some like a seaweed jelly dish, and the king did not like it so much, so the innkeeper kind of chucked it out of the window, and the next day he kind of found this like gelatine mold on the floor. So this was supposedly how agar was discovered, and I love to bring these stories in and the people who make them and the areas that they come from into my work, because I really think it really brings a material to life, and also you appreciate those materials maybe just a little bit more. So ingredients, this for instance, if I was to make an agar biomaterial, agar will come from red seaweed, as we've just seen. And agar is a polysaccharide. And it's what you would classically call like the binder / the polymer. It makes the physical content of the material. I use glycerol from vegetable waste sources. This is extracted from vegetables, and this is what we call a plasticizer, and this adds the malleability, the twist, and like the elasticity to the material. And of course we need water, so we have a small amount of water, small amount of glycerol, and then a lot of agar. And when you apply heat and movement and time, they will basically cross-link together and create a very high viscosity liquid, a bit like caramel, think of it like that. So I'll show you that next process. This is some key kitchen home equipment if anyone is interested in this. All food safe, standard safe, it's all good. Maybe not the carbon one. The carbon one, even though it does come from organic sources, I wouldn't advise doing anything like that at home, just because it's not good to breathe in. But the polysaccharides and the agar, for instance, is absolutely fine. It's what actually, vegan gelatin is made from. So yeah, a couple of kitchen scales. I try and keep the same kit for my materials all the time, just makes me feel a bit better. And I also sterilize everything as well, because a big problem with biomaterials, as you'll see in a second, it's dehydrating them. And dehydrating is taking the water out of the material. So if you don't do that fast enough, or if the material stays in a room for too long and it's quite damp, you will have like mold grow on it. So just be careful if you are planning to do this at home. Okay, so I get my agar, my plasticizer and my water, and I put it into this little pot and I apply heat. So I will stir this for around 15 to 20 minutes until it reaches around 95 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit, Celsius, 95 degrees Celsius. And I'll start to notice it will be very, very fluid, and it'll be very like liquidy. Doesn't make much sense there, a bit like water. And then the more heat that's applied, the viscosity will increase, and you'll notice sort of like a very thick caramelly relationship happen with that mixture. Cool, so next I will pour this within a silicone mold, and silicone's fantastic, as bakers might know out there. It stops things from sticking. It's also probably one of my most favourite videos to watch. It's really satisfying watching it being poured. So yeah, so silicone will hold the material to dry, and yeah, it's just a really fantastic thing to use, and it would last forever and ever and ever and ever, which is what you want. You don't want something to last very short term, and then after 2-3 baking, it's not good to go anymore. So once I'm happy and I've poured this within my tray, this is around about just a bit bigger than an A4 size. I will then pop this in a dehydrator. So it'll go in the dehydrator like this when it's wet, let's say. And then the dehydrator will basically sit in there for about 4 to 6 hours, and it'll dehydrate all of the water out. If you don't have a dehydrator, an oven is really, really, really good. But there is quite a lot of steam involved, and it just depends on your oven as well. So basically you're looking to get rid of all the water in there. And then what you're left is with the agar and the plasticizer. And because the heat has been applied, this then kind of gives you this really nice sort of rubbery material. Great. Well, thank you for listening to that. And it is not the end just yet. So I'm just going to stop sharing. I hope it was interesting. And I'm going to just switch on my iPhone. So give me 2 seconds. Perfect. I don't know if it's possible to have the other Emma Harriet Wright in the room spotlighted at all. You might be able to see it in one of the screens. So it's not just myself. I wonder if I can spotlight pin. Yeah, I don't know if everyone can see that now. Yeah. Okay, so you should be seeing my green cutting mat and not just me talking. I assume everyone can see me. Okay, cool. So yeah, brilliant, great. So once you've have your materials dehydrated, and that will depend on the type of material you have. So in this case, this is a polysaccharide called carrageenan, and this is quite a stiff material. Don't know if you can see the changing in that. This one is a little bit like agar. Well, sorry, it is agar, and it's a lot more fluid. So different polysaccharides have different paper characteristics. If you want to apply colour, this is colour from onions. So I've used the onions to dye some wool, and then I've used the excess dye bath in with the water when I make my materials. So it kind of had this like really nice brown texture left at the end, which is really, really lovely. And then if you want to go a bit crazy, you can kind of go into the resin world, but that's really tricky to dehydrate. So if anyone does have any really good dehydration techniques out there, please do let me know. So these are just a couple of examples of some materials I've made, and I'm just going to start from the beginning of one of those in a second. So basically what you want to do is when you have your flat sheets, you want them nice and flat, you want to start to cut them in nice long thin strips. And then after that, you can then start to begin to weave them. You can dehydrate them in the strips, but they're just a little bit tricky to keep completely flat. So this is something we'll be looking to do, maybe not in that detail today, but you can definitely absolutely do this at home with different tapestry techniques. So tapestry is a really, really traditional weaving technique. It's just use a warp, and a warp is the point on the fabric top to bottom, and then a weft, which is left to right or right to left. So basically, typical tapestry is just up and down, which you might see in quite a lot of techniques. It's a twill, where you drop 2 and pick up 1, etc., etc. So let's walk through a couple of those techniques. How are we doing for time? Okay, yeah, very good. Cool. So what I want to do ideally is just get a nice flat sheet of my material. Don't worry if it gets a little bit warped, it's absolutely fine. In fact, it will just add some really nice character to your weaving. You want to get a really nice good ruler. And what I like to do is not completely strip this down the beginning. I'll keep this top end with no cuts in it, and you'll see why in a moment. Because the piece I'm going to use here is for my warp. So the bit in the fabric that goes from the top to the bottom. So if I leave about 2 centimeters at the top free, I'm going to start to cut these guys in strips with my craft knife. And I'm going to do rough about 1 centimeter wide for the warp. some speed cutting there. So what you're going to have is this bit at the top. Again, you can see that on my phone. Yeah, this bit hasn't been cut. And then you've also created a really nice warp here. So then this material we can start to weave in and out as we go along. The reason I didn't want to cut the top here, because it's going to be our anchor point. Normally you would have a loom, you could strap this to, you can definitely cut longer strips and do that on a home loom. But as we're just using a cutting mat, this is going to be my anchor point, and I'm just going to pop a little bit of masking tape down there. Perfect. So that's going to hold it in place now. So I can go up and down, etc., etc. Okay, so these are just some like little strips I cut the other day. These are just from an onion, carrageenan, really nice colour. See that? And really, really nice and flexible. And I've also got some clear strips as well. Okay, so the technique we're going to use is called a Tabby technique. We basically go up and then down. So I lift one side up, I scoop my first strip in there. He is now, the first strip is underneath the clear biomaterial, and the top one, the second one is on top. So you want to go under, then over. So we're under, over, and then I'm going to lift my next one and then pop them underneath. So I don't know if you can see that very well on my phone. This guy has gone under, now he's over, and now he's under. And that is called a Tabby technique. So you literally continue this all the way along. Okay, so just scoot him in there. Great, let's cut. That was a pull. So that is one strip. So when you do your next strip, you want to do the reverse. So you want to start your first bit on top, as the first one above it was under, and then so on and so forth. So I would just pop this strip in, and then I will show you. So it's quite therapeutic, actually. You can just sit here and listen to Netflix or music and weave away. Normally in traditional tapestry, you have something called a beater, and you beat it into place. In this case, if I put a beater to this, it wouldn't really work, but you can get like a ruler and push it. So you can see there how they're now opposite. So the first one's under, on top, and the one below it is now on top and then under, and so on and so forth. So you can keep on. How are we doing for time? 5 more minutes left, I believe. Yeah.
Emma, one question. Is it okay for you that questions at the end of the session, or do you prefer maybe in this moment or in any moment?
I do not mind. Whatever's easiest for everyone else. I was going to show you a quick twill technique as well. So maybe I'll show you that, and then we should probably have a few minutes left. I don't think I can multitask as much as I like to think I can.
There are a lot of questions, a lot of interest to know more details. Great.
Oh,
so we
yeah,
have
of course.
like 10 minutes or 5 minutes before to finish. I will let you know in order to answer the questions.
Amazing. Normally I do this for about an hour, so I was trying to think of how I can refine it into 25 minutes. So the next technique, I'm going to bring in another sample in here, one that I've made earlier. You can kind of see on this one, I've done something very similar, and it's under, over, under, over, under, over. But with the next technique I really want to try to show you guys is a twill technique. And again, it's using the same system of going under and over and under. However, opposed to just using one strip, which we used before, you use 2. So by using 2, you will then start to, let me pull him out of the way. You will start to create a something that looks like a twill, and you might see a lot in your garments, a twill technique, whether it's silk twill, cotton twill. You usually have it on ties. This is the technique a lot of companies use, and you can get really different variations of that, and any weavers out there will be nodding their heads a lot to this. Great. Okay, so what I'm doing here, you can just about see that, I think. So what I'm doing here is I'm going on top for 2 and then under for 1, on top for 2 and under for 1, on top for 2 and under for 1. Okay. The second one, I'm almost going to shift it along one. So I now want to shift this one on top that's on 2 I want to shift this along 1. So the first one now is going to be under, 2 over, 1 under, 2 over, 1 over. I'll do that quickly. That will be easy to see than me trying to explain it to you. So yeah, I usually have quite big hand looms at home, and I do normally strap these into a hand loom or a heddle loom, if anyone's heard of those. It's like a really nice little table loom, which is a bit more mechanicized, you could say. I've never tried this through a Harris loom. If anyone knows what one of those are, they're like an 8 piece loom. They're amazing, but at the moment I find these materials a bit too chunky to go through, and they're very expensive if you break them. But please let me know if anyone tries. So can we see the difference there? So this guy is under 1 over 1, and you kind of got that checkerboard effect. And now I've started to shift it. So I'm over for 2, under for 1, over 2, under for 1. And you're kind of starting to get that shift across. And what you'll end up with is something like this. Is this technique. This one I've actually used 2 for under, 2 on top, 2 under, 2 on top, 2 under. But you'll start to get that real shift of like the bricks stacking across. So yeah, you can absolutely go crazy with this. I can answer some of your questions for you. You can, yeah, Google Tapestry Techniques and really make it your own. You can make this as wide as you want, as small, as thick. You can really go crazy with it. The main thing is just having a really good warp in place, and warp the bit from the top to the bottom, anchor this in or strap it to your hand loom, and then your weft, so that's left to right, right to left. You can have that to do whatever you like. Yeah, and I hope that was interesting. Would you like me to answer any questions at all?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Emma. Really amazing job, amazing technique, and your passion for these products. It's incredible. Yeah, we have this open space for your question, friends. We have some ones in the chat. One of the question is, what part of the onion do you use?
The skins. So onion skins. It can be red or white onions. Do not use the bit you eat. It will not work, and everything will stink. And yes, no one will like you in your house. The skins are fantastic. So I would get a really good handful. I would have 500 mils of water, boil it for 20 minutes, and then that should be enough dye for anything. So you can get an old woolly jumper. Just make sure you wash it, put it in there and simmer it. Don't boil it. I mean, wool dyeing can be very, very intense, but you can try any natural fabrics. Just be careful not to boil it. But tannins, skin onions are really good because tannins really make that color stick to anything.
Wonderful. Super Amanda have some questions too. Maybe Amanda,
Thank you,
you want to open your microphone?
I love that name, Super Amanda. Thank you. Emma, this has been such a really fascinating talk. And if you were here earlier, you heard her talk about how she uses her materials in her work. So I encourage you to check out the recordings if you were otherwise occupied. But Corinne was asking, as another artist who uses a lot of biomaterials, how do you process the agar directly from the harvested seaweed and then use it in your bioplastic?
Yeah, sure. So it's
actually, sorry, before you, sorry to interrupt, but a follow-up. If you have any material resources, you know, places you go to think about recipes, I know this audience would love to hear about that.
Yes, yeah, of course. So when I get my agar from red seaweeds, I use a process called extraction. And I do this in the lab, as it requires alcohol and a lot of refined equipment that you can't really do in your kitchen. And I mean, you could, but you wouldn't get a really good pure form of agar. So Royal College is next door to Imperial University, and I work with some of the scientists there, and we have a bit of an extraction lab going on. You can actually buy agar by itself. That's definitely a thing you can do. I'm just not too keen. It depends on, you just don't know where it comes from, but that's also a thing you can do. But it's called extraction. That's the process.
Wow.
And oh yeah, the materials. Yeah, so actually I think someone might have popped this in the chat. Materium, yeah, and Zoe from Materium was on this on Friday as well. Yeah, Materium's a really amazing site. It's a real place, and they came and done actually a workshop at the Royal College with us. So that was kind of my introduction, which was really, really lucky and really lovely. So that's where I kind of got my ground basis for materials. And after that, I completely created all my own recipes from this. So really, if you like carrageenan kappa, if you can get hold of that, if you do 15 grams of that, 5 ml of glycerol, and then 450 mils of water, that will give you a really, really cool paper, that Constantine paper material I saw earlier. So I basically started off Materium with their base materials, recipes, and then I adjusted everything within that. So that's heat, time, dehydration, the amount of polysaccharides. I changed the polysaccharides, the ones that weren't on their website. I done about 50 experiments roughly in the end. So yeah, just have fun.
Wonderful.
I have a question.
Oh, please.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for sharing this interesting project. But I wanted to ask you, how does your material behave when it gets in contact with water? Is it hydrophobic?
Sure. So most of the materials I'm showing you guys today aren't hydrophobic. They're shower proof, but if you bought them for 20-30 minutes, they would definitely disintegrate. Absolutely. So to create something, there's different ways you can waterproof something. Resins are essentially waterproof. You have to boil them for about an hour, and they might start to go wobbly. So resins, agar is really, really good for resins, and that's just really pumping up the amount of agar that's in your mixture. I don't have any to hand right now, but you can make them rock hard. Basically, they're super, super stiff. So the more polymer you have in something, the harder, or polysaccharide something you have in something, the more harder it is for it to break down, essentially. You know, so it's good for something to be biodegradable, but if you use it once and chuck it away, you're kind of just feeding that same culture. So you need to make something that's durable. So if it is used for a product, that's what a lot of R&D is happening in the labs right now, is how to make them last longer, basically. And then hydrophobic, a lot of people use oils. I'm not too keen on oils just because you can't really compost with them. But what you can do, if you look at some things like lotus leaves and designs in nature that are hydrophobic, you can create those textured overlays. Yeah. And then what you do is cure it within a mold, and then the water beads on top. Try that. That's really
wonderful.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I think this answers the question of Claudia. This kind of biomaterial could be used in clothing. And also Dylan, he says something similar. How biodegradable are these bioplastics? Have you experimented with composting the products?
Yes, I have. Yeah. So I've composted what I've used here. I haven't composted my conductive ones. They need to go through. I'm currently trying to get certification on those, but they are biodegradable. I'm just concerned with the amount of carbon that's in it, but that's a different conversation. But yes, these ones are healthy to be composted. The one that's on my mat right now, because everything is absolutely fine. Yeah. So it took about 6 months in like a home garden composting, not an industrial composter for these ones. Yeah, I probably wouldn't use these ones I'm showing you guys now as a product. It's more for, I guess, artistry purposes, the ones I've got in my hands.
Yeah, in the same way, well, Super Corinne have a lot of comments, questions. Maybe Corinne, do you want to open your microphone? Yeah, please.
I was just asking the questions that Amanda posed, but super excited to learn about your recipes. And even if you could share in the Slack the resources of what extraction is, what that whole process is.
Yes.
Because a lot of us do work in labs and have access to probably some of the tools that you are using. And we would love that. I know for myself, I'm moving back to Hawaii and we'll be using a lot of seaweeds in my activities, and would love to be able to create as refined a final product from the seaweed I collect. So thank you so much. If you can share any images or any recipes.
Some papers. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much.
That's okay. That's right.
And also, there are a lot of people interested in the recipe of the conductive ones.
Oh, right. No problem. So I just use carbon from organic and food waste and cellulose waste. I can't disclose the recipe right now because we are trying to patent it at the moment. That is a little bit more complex to compare to the ones I showed you guys earlier. But thank you for your interest, and yeah, we shall see.
Great. And also for Amanda and for everyone that wants to be in contact with you, could you share us, please, your contacts?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'll pop that in the chat box now. Yeah.
Wonderful. We have 2 more minutes. If somebody maybe want to add some comments, questions, please, friends. It's a great opportunity.
I can actually say that Dylan had a question. Dylan, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and ask, or I can read it for you.
Emma already responded to
she responded?
question. Yeah, thank you.
But in regards to biodegradability, there's a really amazing university in the Netherlands called, I think it's called TU Delft. I'll find the link for you guys. But they're looking at how to make transparency and recycling streams really clear within bioplastics, because it is a very new-ish area and it's expanding very fast, but there isn't a lot of information in regards to biodegradability, because a lot of the industry standard bioplastics do need to be industry composted, and a lot of people think you can chuck them in your compost bin at home and they'll be ready to feed your carrots in 6 months' time, and they're not. So there's a lot of, yes, TU Delft, thank you, Jessica. Yeah, I think they're in the Netherlands. Was it Finland? No, is it? Oh. Anyway, and they're doing some really great work on the transparency of different types of bioplastics and how to communicate that within future packaging, especially in the food industry. So yeah, do check them out. What I'm doing here is very much home cooking. These little guys on my mat can be chucked outside and rolled under a bush, and that bush will be fine. But there's some bioplastics out there that have a lot more complex systems in place, which are a little bit trickier to break down. But yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Emma.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you for this amazing contribution to the Bio Summit and all this amazing community. And we hope to see your progress in the coming years. Thank you so much. Okay, friends. Continuing with the workshops today. I'm sorry, we have this do-it-yourself traditional science workshop with Super Tanishka Kumar and Anjali, sorry, my pronunciation, from India. Welcome, the space is all of you.
Hello.
Hello, welcome, Tanishka.
Hi, I'm currently studying BTech Bioengineering, and this is my first time with BioSummit, and this will be a more laid-back workshop where we'll try to take care of our skins a bit, and what I'm going to do is we can try, whoever wants, we can select some food articles from our houses and try to use them according to our skin types. I tried to send a message earlier, and okay, I tried to send a message earlier on selecting those. If whoever is selected, I'll just try to have gallery. I can see everyone. So whoever is interested in doing this, for me, my skin is currently really oily, and they are going through breakouts. And in India, from time memorials, these things are going on of using food to take care of our skins. And currently, using natural products is really increasing about it. And so I thought, why not give these a platform about this stuff. So I intend to throw light on the indigenous origins and contemporary usage on the natural plant-based personal care products that have been used in Indian civilizations. I've collected these information from around from my neighbors, from my grandparents. So this is a really small pool of stuff, but I intend to increase this database because it differs around India is really diverse, so it differs in each of the areas. So for now, I have oily skin, so I'll stick with milk for a little moisturization and coffee for a bit of exfoliation and yeah, and turmeric for my pimples, so that the pH level is a bit balanced. And I would like for everyone to also select, if anyone wants to try, they can unmute themselves and I'll try to tell them. If anyone wants to try to use it right now with
I have
me.
some very dry skin. I actually have eczema on my face and it'll crack and bleed.
Okay, so like for dry skin, you can use, for moisturization, you can use milk right now, along with wheat flour if you have, and then there will be, yes, sugar or honey. So yeah, so I've prepared a slide on this also, but I'll do it right now. And if anyone wants to do it along with me, they can. They can raise their hands who is gonna do it with me. Okay, so I'll bring this with me in the kitchen, and yeah, so this is, I hope it's visible a bit. So I'm gonna use turmeric. It's just like the food that is available in your kitchen. Try to use it. There's many alternatives for everything. So for me, turmeric is a really common thing. So I'll be using a pinch of it. Turmeric looks like this. I don't know, it's visible. Yeah. Okay. Then I'll be using milk. So it directly goes in. Nothing. You just have to apply it so a little bit. And coffee for myself. And I'll use, just dump it in. As everyone can continue with me and like add it in and dump it in, and then just start applying on your face. If you want to start doing it, first try a patch so that you can know it doesn't react badly with your skin, right? Because allergies these days. So I'll start now. This will be crazy. I'll just look here and so yeah, it will be messy. Sugar crystals, whoever uses sugar crystals, it's like exfoliation. So you rub it in a bit. Use your fingers and you rub it in. And then it's and flour is like, it won't drop like this if we add flour. It will stay a little bit more. Yeah, definitely try it. Keep it for 10 minutes and it will work. I know my skin, so I'm not doing the patch testing, but definitely do the patch testing. And like there are courses in India that and have books here, like in Sehnaaz is a brand. that teaches stuff. My mother studied that. So I know a book that you can also get. Otherwise, I'll also try to get a database, because this was when I first encountered Biosummit and I was going through that. I have not studied, so I mean like undergrad, so I was on, but I want to show something, so I thought, like, why not this? And it can develop into a more, yeah, because we don't know this everywhere. So just, and if this tomato, for the people whose skin breaks out a lot, and for them tomato or lemon, they can directly apply on the faces for 10 minutes before shower. It will be really messy, but with sugar, if you apply it, it comes out really well. So I want there to be a conversation starter about how do these actually affect our skins, because it's fun to do, but also how does this affect, and how can this go on and not be forgotten by all the chemical stuff that we now use. If Anjali was going to join, and I guess she's here or not, I don't know, but because of her classes and exams, she couldn't join, and it's like 3 in the morning, I guess, here. So she was also like, yeah, a bit, not a lot, but if for like and during weddings, all the groom and brides do a ceremony of haldi. Haldi is turmeric in Hindi. So they apply it on their faces, necks, hands and feet, wherever it's possible, basically. So it's like, it also acts like an antiseptic for skin, and it gives a glow and softness. So it leaves a bit of yellowish I've seen on the girls, but during the daily application, we don't leave it for hours, right? Only for 10 minutes, so it won't leave that much. I have, my white shirt is ruined. So yeah. After we have applied, just I use to bring this back. You can use your neck also, because they don't leave your neck behind. So you can talk like that. I don't have a problem with white shirts. It looks a bit yellow, right? Till then, I'll share my screen, and I hope my white shirt doesn't ruin for like forever. Okay. I'll try sharing my screen right now and wait till this stuff dries a bit. Coffee. It was. I hope it is visible. It's visible, right? Okay. It's visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah. So this is just a small database. I have much more, but these things I want for everyone in the world to know that you can do this yourself. You don't have to buy expensive stuff for your faces and take care of yourselves. And during pandemic, there was lots of restrictions, so I thought that we can do this at home. And I'll just go through some of this. Yeah, so as I said, milk, anything with milk gives moisturization. So there's like wheat flour or with sugar, it can give, if there are sugar crystals, it will also give exfoliation. So like rub it in. And then these are all stuff from my grandmother and everybody. So, and if there's dry and sensitive skin, there's banana, honey, and milk powder, milk, anything works. And everything has alternatives. You can ask me. I'll ask, if I don't know, I'll ask someone else in here. Everyone would know anything. So, and if we want this, because of breakouts, as I said, tomato, orange peels, lemon peels. Now, after we eat oranges or lemons, keep the peels, dry it out. You can powder them and use that with water to apply it on your skin for the same thing. It's really easy, and like you don't have to throw out. You'll use everything. And then there's, for exfoliation, there's dal. Dal is pulses. We eat lots of pulses here. So there's pink lentils is a type of dal, masoor dal we call it, and that if you crush it, it becomes powder, and if you use it like that, then it will be used like an exfoliation type with milk. And Fuller's clay, we go that is for wrinkles. Like with age, the skin becomes a bit. So Fuller's clay or multani mitti, we call it. So yeah, we can use that for skin collagen increase. And then there's to decrease redness or inflammation, you can always use raw turmeric. It's like the fruit, is the root. It's the root of the plant, the raw turmeric, and rose petals. You can use it individually. And then for toners, like the spray thing after the makeup we use, and after moisturization that we do, you can use rose water and rice water. So rice water is easily available, and rose water, it's easily available here, but I don't know about everybody else. Then what I want to talk about is health supplements. This is like, there have been increased studies in Ayurveda in India currently, Ayush and stuff. Lots of studies and products have been increasing, but those are also like, we have to buy them, and those are products with filtered and in concentration. So it's you can use some supplements here that you can use directly from your kitchen. So for arthritis pain, this fenugreek leaves. It warms your body, and you can use for pain, basically for pain and cold. So it warms your body, and so you can use fenugreek leaves, eat them. And then there's honey. If you have congestion, chest congestion, and because of cough, you can use ghee, clarified butter, to increase your cough removal. And then we make sweets during cold season. Sweets are laddus. They are yellow colors and different colors. And if during cold season, we can use them, including ginger. And then there's a thing like post-pregnancy care. So post-pregnancy care is usually discussed among women in India, of course. So, and that traditional health supplements used here are many. Some of these you can see here, and they are carom seeds and stuff, and black cumin seeds and all. They have warmth and to bring back your blood purification. So yeah, that was my really short presentation.
Amazing, Tanishka. Thank you to you. Thank you also to Angeli for your answers. We have a bit more time. If you want to comment, please, friends, you have some comments, questions. This is your opportunity. But really amazing and very simple. You know? There are many different sources that maybe we have at home with a lot of properties that maybe we don't know how another application it has.
Okay, so there's a thing. I have to wash my face first. So yeah, don't forget to wash your faces. So after that, you'll feel good. I'll wash. I can entertain some questions till then, and then till then I can wash my face.
Okay, we can wait for you. Please don't.
Okay, just some seconds.
Please. Very, very important. How much time do you have to put or to keep this? Maybe Angeli, do you want to open your microphone or your camera? Thank you for your amazing recommendations and suggestions.
Actually, I'm really sorry. I cannot like open my camera because right now everyone is fast asleep here and the lights are turned off, so you can't see me here. And yeah, first of all, I really want to say that turmeric, many of you were asking how they can find turmeric in West. So like in USA, like in other countries, UK, USA, I have seen there are certain Indian general stores where you can easily find turmeric powder. You can even order them. And my personal recommendation, like during Corona times, everyone was saying that coronavirus affects your immunity. So it's like a tradition that is passed on, a traditional knowledge that is passed on, that turmeric, consuming turmeric milk helps to boost your immunity. And in fact, I am quite prone to cold and sudden changes in the weather. So I started consuming turmeric milk right before the seasonal change. So that definitely helps me to boost my immunity, and I do not fall prey to like severe cold that much. So I would personally recommend everyone. It doesn't have any side effects. Even every human from every corner of the world can consume that. You can either use turmeric powder or you can just crush that turmeric. It looks like ginger, but you can crush them and you can make the paste out of it. So it's easily available in Indian stores, or you can even order from Amazon if it's available in your country's Amazon app. So yeah, I want to share this.
Great. Thank you, Angeli. Thank you, Tanishka. Where could we find more information if we want to, I don't know, prepare these recipes, or if we want to, yeah.
You can directly contact me. Yeah, you can directly contact me, and I'm currently trying to make a database because I thought this is just a preliminary idea, right? So because there's interest, so I'll try. I can like make a Google form, simple for start a Google form and spread it across Indian friends, and they can collect their data from their mothers and sisters and grandmothers, and I can directly provide that to everyone. You can contact me directly on Slack. I'll just I'll send my like social medias here. And I just wanted to say that there's one thing I just wanted to say, that cheap doesn't always mean better, right? So the chemical products, it is being produced considerably in large, and because of that there has been, and now because of all the natural product craze right now, there's a craze in India again. So because of that craze, there have been some small companies producing natural products again, but those are really costlier, because of course, there's not much people knowing and the production is low. So I want to, like every product, this will be costlier, but try to find these companies and buy from them and support them. Yeah. If there's any other questions, I'll.
Wonderful. Yeah, please. Questions, comments? We have an extra time to, yeah, maybe for more questions, more ideas.
Hey there, Tanisha. Thank you so much for sharing your project. And I would like to ask you, all of this is traditional knowledge?
Yeah,
okay.
All this is traditional knowledge. I've collected this from my mother, from my grandmother, and my neighbors, and so they are all like they haven't got any education and they are home wives and stuff, but yeah, they know how to take care. And there's collection. Just like I told, there's a book, Shehnaz. If I find a link to it, I only got a physical book of it and it was in Hindi. So I don't know if I can find. If I find, I'll send the link on Slack.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Super Tanishka and Angeli. We hope to know more about your research, more about your amazing contribution, and thank you for this great workshop in this Bio Summit 5.0. Okay, so we are going to continue with the next workshop. Let me share with you. So here we go. Our next speaker, it's also a great bio contributor. It's a super Cristobal. Thank you so much, Cristobal, for participation today. And well, thank you for the workshop in this Ancient Future Technology session. Please tell us, what do you prepare for us today?
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. So this is my first Bio Summit as well, just like Tanisha's and maybe some other folks as well. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And I wanted to talk to you about biocultural mapping and why it is important. So I'm going to share with you a presentation. And then if you could help me by telling me when I have like 4 minutes left so I can show you the actual map. So everyone can see my screen, right? Well, my name is Cristobal, as he just said. I'm currently studying a master's degree in water technology and watershed management, but this is not related to it. It is actually, well, one of my personal passions, which is the preservation of biocultural knowledge and well, this is what I'm going to talk to you about. I don't know whether any one of you is acquainted with the term biocultural diversity. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it is. It was a term coined or thought first by Luisa Maffei and Dave Harman. They are both researchers from, well, she's from Italy, he's from the States, and they joined efforts to start creating these new idea of the richness we have divided into biological diversity and humankind's cultural diversity. And the interlink between those two is biocultural diversity. I want to show you some of these maps, which have been done in the past to show the distribution of languages in red, and we can see in other colors the ecoregions, the different parts of, like in this case, Mexico and Central America, part of South America. And it shows, as you can see, as many, when you can see more like points or lines in red, you can see that there's more linguistic richness. And well, these maps can help us outline some of the most important patterns in cultural aspects. So this is one relating language and ecoregions. This is another one relating slope and language. Both of these were made by bioculturaldiversity.org. You can find them there if you want to see more of them. There's like from all parts of the world. And well, some of the causes of the loss of biodiversity are the environmental degradation, which drives out people out of their actual habitat or place of living. The neo-colonization, which is the fact that we are introducing new values and new living styles to more communities that in the past were isolated or were not so much in contact. I'm not saying that technology is bad at all, because it has proven to help them out in many ways. But when we start changing their living structure and their values, it also changed their relation with the environment, which is an important part of the biocultural diversity. We can also see that some factors such as economical, political, such as wars, have drove so many people out of the land and have driven to other countries, living as well a hole in their cultural legacy. So why it is important to preserve biocultural diversity? One of the reasons is that, as you may or may not know, natural systems tend to be more resilient when they are integrated by a lot of parts, and that helps it out, like not be prone to drastic changes when it has an external perturbance. And also biodiversity is important because it's related to biodiversity. As we have heard before in, I think it was Margarita Mora talk, she said that, well, these are the actual guardians of the knowledge, or the integration between human beings and our environment. They have preserved these kind of symbiotic and neutral way of living, which we in cities have not, because we've created also lines, like lines instead of circles or cycles. And it is also important because it gives meaning and sense of belonging. Some of the biocultural characteristics that we can map or we can talk about are the language, some of the religious rituals, traditional dishes, costumes, the use of medicinal plants, the knowledge of flora and fauna, and traditional environmental knowledge, which is related to land stewardship, and obviously the sense of belonging. So I want to talk to you about GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems. They help us outline different features of the territory, and we can relate that to data like population or the number of Spanish speakers and like of native languages speakers. We can also turn these information into KML files, which can be distributed to further audience in and can be deployed on the Google Earth software. But what I mainly wanted to focus on was on the web page integration. I don't know whether any of you have heard about QGIS. It is a GIS software, that an open source software, which is what I like it. I also have another one, which is ArcGIS, which is even more powerful because it is paid. But what I like about this one is that you can share it with everyone, and well, it's more deployable. And well, I'm going to talk to you about a little bit of the linguistic regions in Mexico. There are about 68, well, actually 69 languages. One is Spanish and the other 68 are indigenous languages, with 164 linguistic variants. There's also 7 million people, about 7 million people who speaks some indigenous language, 5 years and older. And I want to focus on mainly on Otomi. It's called Ñañú in their own cosmovision. and it has 9 different variants. It is spread along Mexico in different states, but in the place where I live, which is Querétaro, it's a state in the central part of Mexico, there's one variant which is spoken in Toliman and Amelco, which are 2 municipalities. And well, the Ñañú people was already there before the Spaniards came, or the Spanish people came. They were previously semi-nomad. And one of the important things about this community is that it has preserved its traditions very much alive. So this is Amealco, this place where I live. It is located in the central part of Mexico along the volcanic belt, Trans-Volcanic Belt. It is a belt that joins both Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico through a geologic volcanic area. And well, these are some of the pictures of the communities. This is one tradition they have, which is to, when it's called the blooming of the milpa, which means that when the corn, it starts to flower and to start the process of giving the fruit, or the corn, the kernel, they make a ritual where they go, the whole community goes to the most important part, or the place where somebody has a milpa. They go and dance and have a good time, and they celebrate the fact that they're going to start having food again. There are also many different community projects in which the indigenous community is incorporated, and there's a lot of richness in terms of the kind of corn that is produced in these areas. And well, these are some of the sources that I found to support my map. These are some of my friends who have done a very hard work on bringing back the tradition and taking it to a broader audience. So this is my contact if anybody wants to contact me. And I'm gonna ask you please I have another session here open. I want to share my screen. Can you stop spotlighting me so I can share my screen on the other session that I have open, please?
I don't think you can actually share, 2 people can share screens at the same time. This has been something we've been struggling with in all of the plenary sessions too.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna stop sharing these. I'm gonna close these session, and I'm gonna, the other one is already open. So just to show you the map.
All right, yeah, once you stop sharing the screen, I can spotlight the other account.
I actually just changed the permission on that. Do you want to try it and see if it'll work?
Okay. I think it worked. Can everybody see the other screen?
No, I still see the same screen.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this, stop share, and now this one.
There you go.
Great.
Okay, so I created this map, and it's made out of different layers. One of them is the political division, which shows in red. And then I made another one with the biodiversity, which depicts the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, species, and a picture of it. So this is just a start. I would like to, make it a little bit more more beautiful. The interface make it more beautiful. But it helped me out because I use the GIS software in order to create this, and from this I can build by changing the script in the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code. So there are some other, some of these are the edible mushrooms that are found in the region. And some of these pictures I took to myself, I shot to myself. We can also see another one which shows the areas where most speakers are located. in red, you can see. And as you go to the blue, you can see that these are the regions where much less people speaks the language. 7 people out of 874. And in this area, which is called Santiago Mezquitlan, there are 379 out of 387. So it is majorly a indigenous population. You can also see a little bit of the medicinal plants. The names. I don't have pictures of each and every one, but it is still a work in progress. But I wanted to show you that there is still much to do, but we can make this into a way to show the people why it is important to preserve the culture in these regions. And yeah, arts and crafts, we can see they produce this kind of a brick, which is made of out of a volcanic material, a sedimentary material. They also do pottery. And well, that's pretty much all.
Cristobal, one question here in the chat. Where do you get the data? Who is able to contribute with the map?
Actually, I took kind of the idea from iNaturalist. I don't know whether one of you knows that that platform, but I thought that it would be a good opportunity to do the same, but in terms of the cultural knowledge. And I get these information from the National Institute of Statistics and Statistics and Geographics from Mexico, from a governmental site. And some of the other information, well, the locations and all that, I got it from INEGI, which is the name of it is called. But the other information, I took it from the thesis of some of my friends. I have a friend who is a linguist, and he worked on characterizing the flora, fauna, and all the useful foods and medicine they have, and make it like a way to show the importance of the knowledge. So he made it in both Spanish and Otomi. Ñañú is how they actually call themselves. So if there's any other question, or if you want to participate, if there's any programmer or somebody else who's willing, anthropologist, biologist who wants to collaborate, I'm more than willing to make it happen. When is the blooming? It was like commonly it happens in July, about July, May. But this time it lagged, so it was until around August. Blooming. Oh well, that's a question.
Super, Jean-Luc have a question or comment.
Yeah, I was mentioning that in Louisiana, we have like the same the green corn dance. When I was growing up, we had that. It was like a dance for 4 days, and then ball games. But it was basically around when you could finally like eat it.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is with the lag in the dance, because I was waiting for you to say July because that's when we do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then you said it was August this time. Mm-hmm. And so like I'm wondering if there is like perhaps like also like the correlation of like climate change, you know, if there's like because of the shifting of the seasons. So mm-hmm. now the traditional ceremonies or dances or whatever the observance is, like that shifts as well. And then how does that kind of like also impact the mapping? Perhaps like there's a layer of maybe there's like a vector of time as mm-hmm. well to kind of like show like over time there's shifts.
I think it is really interesting what you're saying. It could be, you could add the time factor, which would be pretty interesting to show how the data differs along time. But that's not what I did. It is a pretty good thing to do. It would show a little bit more about the actual effect of climate change on the crops and the harvests. But no, I have not integrated that. However, I'm going to take that note on that because it is an important and pretty good thing.
It would also be interesting, not just over long periods of time, but within 1 year. So you could say at this time of year, these things are blooming or ripe or ready for use.
Yeah.
There's different time factors you could do too.
Oh, you muted yourself. I don't know whether you wanted to. Or not.
Oh, I was done. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, there's different time factors you could do. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, the thing is that we depend on the Landsat images. So if you want to start doing more like closer spans of time, you need to start paying for the satellite images. However, we can use some of the data that is already open and like do what he just recommended me. So thank you so much for your opinion.
Great. Here, Aubrey, have another question. In your conversations, are the indigenous communities using other non-human species to indicate when it is time to harvest?
Not that I know of, but they must have some certain knowledge about, like, for instance, the monarch butterfly travels through Amelco, or passes through there to go to. So it could also be used as a.
Thank you. Yes, please, Aubrey, you want to open your microphone or maybe talk more about your question? It would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Beno, and I love the manatee. Cristobal, yes, I've heard something similar, and I was wondering if there's truth to that in the sense of the monarchs coming and indicating, and their arrival, of course, the connection with the Day of the Dead, but also acting as an indicator of being time to harvest corn, and obviously in a very specific area. In this case, it would be Michoacan. So I was curious if there are others, and I hear you saying that there likely is, and this is obviously sacred knowledge and not necessarily one that's should be openly shared. I think my follow-up question to that is also, are you studying connections between, or do you know of someone who's studying the connections between the Oyamels and the arrival and the 4 months of togetherness that the trees and monarchs spend together, which is normally a solitary insect? So thank you.
Not exactly that I know of, but the INECOL, which is a ecology institute, there are some researchers working on that. Actually, the one from Morelia. So if you want to check out on their thesis, how do you call it, repository, I think you could find some information there. Not actually that I know of, but I'm kind of sure that you could find something there because it is an important subject. And back in the day, actually, there were a lot of parts here in Amelco as well where the monarch butterfly would travel to and mate. But nowadays, because of the deforestation and, you know, the different changes in soil, there's been obviously a detrimental effect. So thank you, Aubrey. I don't know whether you have.
Wonderful. Please, Cristobal, don't leave that meeting yet. We have more, maybe, more questions, comments. Jean-Luc, do you want to ask more, or this is from the last question? Okay. Okay, Cristobal, the platform, it's amazing, and the challenge also, it's a huge challenge. How could we empower local communities in order to connect with the amazing value that we have in nature and don't lose our local guardians, the natural guardians of our biodiversity? This concept of bioculture, it's amazing. In your experience, how local communities are really involved with this kind of technology, how much they are using it in order to find value with the biodiversity environment that they have, and what are the challenges that you could find in this sense?
Well, I can tell you something about the milpa, because right now the Mexican government is offering people more money to harvest white corn instead of the different varieties of corn there are in this region. So that's one of the issues they can find when trying to preserve biodiversity. But there's also one related to knowledge of technologic devices. So you know that most of the people already uses smartphones and all that. But when you start using these kind of software, it requires a little bit more of a training, let's say. We can all do it, but it would require a little bit more training and knowing a little bit more of the background in the technology area. However, there's been different efforts. Among them, one of my friends works with different communities in terms of art. He preserves their traditions by showing in different his company is called Banyan, Compañía de Títeres, a puppeteer. He's a puppeteer. So through that effort, he has showed the rest of the people, the non-indigenous people, that there is an inherent value in the richness of culture inherent to indigenous people. But what was the other question? I don't know if I.
What are the challenges that you
okay.
find in this process?
One of the first challenges is putting effort to getting in contact with the people, because all the people there is really nice. They are all open to show you their house, give you, for instance, pulque. I don't know whether any one of you knows pulque. It is a traditional beverage, alcoholic beverage made from maguey. So it is a common drink here. So people is really open to show you what their life is like, and they really get excited when you start talking to them or even if you show just like that you know a little bit of their language. For instance, if you want to say in Ñañú thank you, you would say hamadi. That's how we'd say thank you. So if you say that to someone, they will feel like really inspired, no? to keep on with their knowledge and their language, because it is no longer ostracized or okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Cristobal. We have another question from Anders. Maybe Anders, do you want to unmute yourself and share directly your question, please?
Okay, so.
Okay, don't worry. Did you read the question, Cristobal? Or
you find interest connection between your studies and watershed technology and biodiversity? Well, there's actually one thing I wanted to show you here. So I added also a stream layer, which shows that all the runoff in the. I'm actually not delineating the watershed. This is only the political division, but it would be good to add the basin, the actual outline of the basin, so you can see that all the runoff from the different relief actually flows to the Lerma River, which is a very important river here in Mexico. And you can also see that most of the largest communities are located in the areas where the crop fields are, you know, the lowest parts. It is actually located at like the first, this place is the highest point. It is at about 2,900, and about here it must be around 2,400 2,400 meters over sea level.
Great, thank you, Cristobal. We have one more question from me. Is there any link to the map?
Huh?
Or do you have the links? Or some...
This is well, I will obviously share the link or the information on the Google Drive, so you can use it if you want to. But the thing is that I need to first integrate another part of the layers to the folder. So after I do that, I will share with you the folder.
Excellent. Is there any comments, questions, friends? 3, 2.
Okay, I can ask perhaps one more, because I'm interested in like as a project, you know, for yourself, it's good. I also wanted to know, like, what is the possibility of kind of scaling it, perhaps teaching the local communities about entering the data into QGIS, so that they are able to cultivate their own like local databases.
I think one thing we could do is to turn it into an app where you can, as you identify as an indigenous people, you can log in and start like sharing your vision, your knowledge, and maybe also your network of contacts. Because one of the important things is to make seen all the ancient knowledge and all the importance of this ancient knowledge. There are actually many different cooperatives or groups which work with medicinal plants, for instance, or with the preservation of the forests. There are different groups that work in the preservation of cultural knowledge and also biodiversity.
So I'm Alison Stringer from New Zealand, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the lightning talks for our Ancient Future Technologies. So I understand we have Deborah here. Kia ora, Deborah. It's my pleasure to hand over to you now as our first presenter.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. It's my first BioSummit. I'm loving it. So I hope you're hearing me okay. So, okay, what I need to present today, since we are running out of time, is that I am graduating biotechnology in Brazil. And during college, I always thought that biosafety and biosecurity were the basis for a project to be considered safe. And an example of that was the transgenic discussion in Brazil, because I thought that society resistance to some technologies were a fruit of only ignorance, and that science communication could solve all problems on the matter. But in reality, the whole politics behind science aims and constructions, especially in emergent countries, don't necessarily represent positive improvements for the people in it. And since we are discussing so much during this event, ethics and sustainability, I invited two representatives from indigenous people from Latin America to expose their thoughts and feelings regarding biotechnologies and how to build it respecting nature and its guardians. So I hope I myself made the subtitles, so it was 4 a.m. in the morning, so please forgive if there's something wrong. Okay, just a moment.
Ainyachu
Nuha Sutiha Luciani Quechuawarmi. Olá, meu nome é Lucia, sou mulher quechua. Hoje estamos aqui para falar um pouco sobre a questão da ciência, mais especificamente da biotecnologia e os povos originários. Com povos originários, gostaríamos de falar da importância da inclusão de povos originários, né, de pessoas indígenas dentro dos espaços das universidades, dentro da academia. Porque quando se tem pessoas indígenas produzindo ciência, logo se tem ciência feita também para os povos indígenas. E toda a sociedade tem a ganhar com isso, porque o conhecimento ancestral, ele é muito vasto, ele é muito rico. Então, quando a gente fala ainda por cima de biotecnologia, né, transgênicos, vacinas, com plantas, então os povos indígenas têm muitas coisas, não somente a oferecer, mas também é uma troca. Então, os povos indígenas também podem acabar sendo prejudicados por uma ciência feita de um ponto de vista apenas colonial. Por isso é muito importante que nós indígenas ocupemos os espaços das universidades. Não adianta apenas permanecer nas universidades, que já é muito difícil para os povos originários, mas também que nessa permanência nas universidades se dê espaço de fala, mas espaço de fala mesmo, né? Espaço de fala ativo, que se escute, que se troque, que realmente se descolonize a ciência, porque os povos originários têm conhecimento muito valioso, que só tem a beneficiar. Nesse momento, nós estamos vivendo uma emergência global climática. Escutem os povos originários, escutem essa sabedoria, pois ela é imprescindível para a gente conseguir realmente salvar o planeta e frear o aquecimento global.
Waha kayuka canela ropo me atakato mempe. Ciências e biotecnologia. Eu sou Caiocã Canela, do povo Canela. Digo a todos, oi a todos vocês que estão nos ouvindo nesse momento. Para nós, povos indígenas, a ciência é muito importante em algumas partes, porque trabalha com a natureza, em alguns requisitos, sabe? Os nossos povos Canela mesmo, nós não perdemos um índio Canela, nós não perdemos nenhum Covid, né? E também fizemos um trabalho muito importante com as ervas, né? Fizemos um trabalho muito importante com as lideranças de dentro da comunidade. Então, a ciência, para nós, temos que estar enquadrado na ciência, mas de uma forma que não tira o nosso modo de ser, mas que venha contribuir para que nós possamos conviver no bem-estar com a natureza, para que possamos conviver com o bem-estar com os animais, extraindo daquilo que foi nos dado por Parpano, né, que é Deus em nossa língua, da melhor forma, com os conhecimentos científicos, né, com os conhecimentos da ciência. Porque assim, a ciência para nós é um descobrimento. Quando eu via falar em ciência, eu, nossa, o que é ciência? Hoje eu entendi que é ciência. A ciência está em tudo, né? Na biotecnologia, a ciência está em biodiversidade, em tudo que você pensar, numa medicina, em tudo hoje a ciência está, porque a ciência é uma busca de conhecimentos para tudo o que traz benefício, e tem coisas que também não trazem benefício para nós como os transgênicos mesmo. E eu falo para vocês que temos que falar com os nossos jovens para estudar a ciência, porque adquirimos mais conhecimento e sabedoria e podemos compartilhar também o que nós temos de melhor em nosso povo.
Hopefully, we can not only fight to democratize science, but also to decolonize it, to think beyond what companies want, beyond what the richest countries want us to construct, but also what is good for us, what is good for nature and people. And that's it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Are there any questions from the audience, from our attendees?
Really quickly, I wanted to ask about the issue of transgenic plants, and perhaps can you elaborate? Is it also about like monocultures, replacing traditional crops within Brazil. What specifically are the tensions from the Canela and the Quechua?
Transgenic, it's a very complex situation in Brazil. I will try to explain it the better way I can. I'm glad you asked, actually, because recently I joined a political party that works with indigenous people and their rights. And it is very harmful, the agro industry, to all of us in Brazil, especially indigenous people, since they invade their spaces and they kill people, they kill children to destroy our villages and plant transgenic plants in monoculture. So it's not only the technology to construct a transgenic plant, but why are we constructing it? Since, I don't know, less than a quarter than our lands produce the actual food that is eaten by people, and half of all land is designated to agriculture, to plant monoculture, to feed cattle, and it's not food. So when we are constructing science, and when I was building science, the main justification for building a new project with plants was to stop hunger in the world, and that's not true. Building it does not stop hunger. It is the system that makes people hungry, and it is the familiar breeding and the respectful breeding of food that actually feeds people. So yeah, I think that's it, the main transgenic point, because I came from the academia, I came from an environment that says, well, it is safe. Why are you being so reluctant to eat transgenic? And it's not that. It's not that people are afraid. People are afraid from a whole industry. And when I realized that, I understood what we are being co-opted for, and for what our main energy is being put on. Why are we working our knowledge to build something that harms people, that truly kills people in emergent countries? So that's what I was trying to share with you. I don't know if I'm being clear, because I'm very nervous, and my English when I'm nervous is
You're doing very
weird.
well.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I don't know if I answered your question too. Hopefully I did.
Deborah, I have a question for you. So
okay.
I'm a great talk. It sounded fabulous. Your English is great. So I'm a synthetic biologist, and so the thing that I look for is opportunities to better communities and of any size, of a small village or of a larger community, by targeted placement of transgenic organisms. And of course, I think what I understood from your talk is that what you're describing is the escape of transgenic organisms getting into these places when they're not supposed to be there. And so I wonder, is there any scenario where you could do some sort of targeted delivery where the intention is to help, and it would be a welcome addition rather than some harm? And maybe the case is just no, maybe it's not,
That's not talking about plants, but the whole technology scenario. That's what I asked for my friends to talk about. How can we construct science and be welcome from what we are constructing. How can we build something that it truly helps? Not only we think we are saviors and we are building things to amaze the others and save the world, but we're actually not doing exactly that. And the answer is what they said. We need to include these thoughts into academy. We need to include the political movement I'm part of is called, I don't know, freely translated, it's well-being or good living. It is a knowledge, it's an indigenous knowledge of how it is living a good life and co-living with people and nature and not being harmful to one another. Sure. So talking to communities when we are in the position of scientists, we need to listen more than just explain science. Mm. We need to share knowledge, but also have our ears open to see, to understand why they are being so reluctant to what we are bringing to them. That's how we can construct a well-directionized science, I think.
Yes, definitely. I actually just like to invite any of our Indigenous attendees to respond to that if they wish to.
Yeah. Is there any regional?
There are, but some of them are quite worn out.
No, I think it's just the point of the talk is to, regardless of what the intervention is, the first thing that you have to do is talk to the impacted communities that are on the front lines, because perhaps in some ways there is a reinvention of the wheel, saying that we have this prescriptive knowledge that is something that can supplant what's already been there for like since time immemorial. So it's the point is to like always check in with the communities first.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. Was there anybody else before I just add a brief comment? Feel free to ask in the chat. I just noting, agree with you, Deborah, thank you. But there's also a significant body of knowledge of how to work in this way. So I also encourage everybody to read widely on the subject. Canada and New Zealand aren't perfect, but we have started in these areas and there are other models available as well. So there's a body of literature on this as well. Back to you, Deborah. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to me. And if you want to discuss more about the subject when I'm not like shaking, I would be.
You did brilliant.
Very...
Just one more, just checking if there are any more questions or short comments from those who haven't already spoken, especially.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, just look out where you're putting your energy on, for who you're putting your energy into something.
Yeah, Tina Pai, I completely agree. So, my friends, we are next due to hear from Desiree, but we're not sure. Dearest Desiree Dresenar, but I'm not sure we have them online. So my dear friend, it's possible we have a time zone confusion here. So I'm just wondering, Dimitri, I see that you are here with us. Are you okay to present soon? We can give you a few minutes turnaround time.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Hi.
Thank you so much.
So should I go on?
Please. Welcome, Dimitri.
Okay, just let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Dimitri from the UPF, from the Translational Synthetic Biology Lab based in Barcelona, and I'm doing my work, my PhD on gene editing of human genomes. So I find myself usually thinking about how these technologies that we are working can affect the environment and humanity. And then I had some questions that I thought they were interesting of potential applications beyond therapy, and I wanted to share them with you, and mainly share these questions to know what you think, and if we as a community need to address maybe some dangers or potential challenges. And of course I've been listening a lot of interesting stuff these days in the Bio Summit. It's been amazing. So thank you for making this great event. And yeah, sorry if my talk is a bit too technical. I'll try not to be. So yeah, basically through history of mankind, there have been drug uses for various purposes, and I'd like to classify them into two different scenarios. One which I would call enabling or for self-exploration or enlightenment uses, and here we have examples such as, for example, food preservation, which was used through fermented drinks and alcohol. It in turn had some psychological effects. And sorry, my presentation, as I was thinking. Then drugs have been used for secret rituals, and then for another example, it's like for increased productivity, such as caffeine. Then, for example, for getting over trauma, and for example, to enhance creativity, and of course, probably many other uses that through history. Oh, I had a title here that's not seen. And then I think there are some, we could classify drug uses into also normalization or manipulation uses, where maybe the uses of the drugs are not so optimal for our communities. For example, for manipulation, or in worse scenarios for torture, and maybe for what I would call normalization of societies. So going against diversity and yeah, trying to kind of channel people into one way of thinking. So yeah, basically, if we see the origin of these diverse molecules and metabolites that have existed, so basically mainly we have what the Earth has given to us. So existing biodiversity, and then co-evolution of certain plants with mankind. And at some point in history, very recently, we see chemical synthesis appearing. So lots of new molecules have been synthesized. And then also more recently, we have what we call synthetic biosynthesis, and through genetic engineering of, let's say, plants, bacteria, yeast, to get these both molecules and proteins in this case. And yeah, mainly here proteins appear because I guess with if we edit an individual to synthesize certain proteins, then we can really have the effect of the protein. Otherwise, it's difficult to consume a protein and expect to have an effect unless you synthesize it yourself. So yeah, basically what one could think of is, will in the future exist so-called genetic drugs, where we would seek these effects of traditional and already existing drugs through gene manipulation. And this could be temporary addition of genes, temporarily or transgenes, temporarily turn on and off of genes with transcriptional activation, and RNA and inactivating, let's say, proteins. So in that sense, to deliver these whatever RNA, protein, or DNA forms. So my presentation is not in the order I expected. Yeah, so basically these effects can be achieved through either putting a piece of RNA or DNA, and here the emergence of RNA vaccines, it has been a technological development that has probably been quite enabling for achieving these goals of adding different transgenes. And then we have a carrier and that could be viral vectors or non-viral vectors that we would use to deliver these messages into the cells. And then I see that someone's asking in the chat, will the effect remain? So that's a great question. I would say that this could also be fine-tuned, right? So basically, if we use RNA or non-integrative DNA, the effect should be transient. But we could also achieve long-lasting effects if the DNA gets integrated, which of course this has, I guess, some interesting implications in these novel approaches. And when we speculate about the administration routes, probably most likely would have either intranasal or intravenous administration. So as some potential targets, I just included here the list of that George Church has for human enhancement alleles. And then we could think of stuff such as increased learning capabilities, better memory for accessing and recording much bigger part of history, and more compassion, more empathy, more learning. So I here just made a example. It's a bit simple, so I just wanted to illustrate how could this look like, but this, of course, yeah, a really naive, I would say, example. So let's say we want to activate the serotonin receptor to emulate the effects of psilocybin. So this is a drug that's found in several psychedelic mushrooms. So we could, for instance, design an antibody against the receptor, and then we could encode this antibody into RNA, and then we could encapsulate the antibody and then finally administered intranasally. And in parallel, we could also make DNA, or another approach for achieving a similar goal would be to make DNA of the antibody and then encoding into a viral vector that we would administer, and we would have the same effect. We could also use transcriptional activation, so mechanisms to turn on and turn on genes, to basically, since we already have the gene of the 5H2, just to increase its expression in our body. And we could get these again by making the RNA of the activator protein, and then we could use transcriptional activators that act specifically, such as mediated by CRISPR systems. I'm sorry if this is getting a bit too technical. So yeah, which would be the properties that these genetic drugs would have. Oh, sorry, this presentation is going a bit. Yeah. So I see again in the chat, someone is asking, is there a way to express genes for a limited time? So that's a great point, right? Which are the temporal scales of these effects? Usually with molecular drugs, the effects would last from minutes to hours. Here, I guess that with mRNA, we would get an effect of a couple of days. So I would say days to up to a week. And then the possibility of permanent modifications is also arising, right? If we would use DNA that gets integrated with a viral vector or some other strategy. Also, one could speculate that we could get more fine-tuning, right? Because probably we could, if we would know the genetic pathways involved in all these changes, we could tune some of them, and then we could have personalized effects. And then here there's another aspect that's maybe the one that's most worrying, especially when we think of biohazardous uses of these technologies, is what if someone could make these genetic viral vectors, but that are even replicative, so that they can propagate into human or other animal.
We might have just lost Dimitri briefly, so we'll just see if they come back.
And lastly,
it's okay, Dimitri, we just lost you briefly there for a moment, so don't worry, just take us back 30 seconds perhaps.
Okay, sorry, I think my internet was lagging a bit. Hopefully I should have a bit better connection.
We still have your slides, so you're doing well.
Okay, great. So yeah, I was speaking about the comparison between the so-called molecular and gene drugs, if you want to call them, and I was mentioning different timescales that one could be more fine-tuned and personalized, and then the replication potential. So one could think that a viral vector could be engineered to have these effects on neuromodulation, and that could also be propagated. So here we are talking about engineered viruses, and this is something that would probably be very, very dangerous. But yeah, and then the last point is, since these drugs are fairly complex to engineer and manufacture, how are we going to ensure accessibility into the community? So yeah, I just want to finish with the challenges that I think that we can address, and I like to put them there, so maybe in future biosummits we can really start to work on these challenges. And yeah, the first one is how we integrate ancient wisdom into this new type of mind-altering substances. How do we ensure equity and accessibility? And how do we avoid the so-called neurohomogenization in the context of let's say if someone would be up there to put up this virus, how we generate this immunity. So are we have to speak of some immune autonomy that would ensure that we are protected against someone that or some system that wants to control us. So this was all. I'm not a bioethicist, so and not very trained. So if someone in the audience wants to join me, and I don't know, I would like to hear what do you think.
Thank you, Dimitri. We did have one question about if diatoms could be used as a vector. Did somebody want to unmute and just talk us through what that question was about?
Yeah, I just noticed that you use inorganic carriers as an example, and I was wondering if diatoms could be an alternative for silica nanoparticles in this case.
To be honest, I'm not an expert in carriers, but I'm sure they could Like, I don't see why they shouldn't.
Cool, thanks.
Any questions? Any more questions from Dimitri? It's a fascinating area. So if there's no more questions, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say thanks and hope that we can work in these challenges all together and figure out how we deal with them.
Nyamihi, Dimitri, thank you. So apologies for the schedule shuffle, my friends. Next, we are delighted to hear from Catherine.
Hi, everybody. I will be presenting today with Jay as well from Precision Biomonitoring. I'll share my screen and I might just keep my video off while I'm presenting so that my internet connection is up to speed.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah. Can you all see my screen now?
I think it's just coming up. I think it's just taking a little while to go to full screen, but it'll be there soon.
Can you see this? Is that working now? Or not so much still?
Not yet. You may just wish to try again. I think it will work. It just might need a little time, or maybe try again if you could.
Maybe maybe Jay would be willing to share his screen. That would be nice. If you're available.
Let's see what I can do.
And sorry about that.
It's hard when you're working with very little internet.
Yeah, I'm not sure to be able to share this.
It's okay. It's worth taking the time to get it up. So just as soon as you can.
Okay, are we on? Is that working? Loading.
Not quite.
It's loading. Fingers crossed.
Perfect.
Yay! Thank you.
Yeah,
Amazing.
perfect.
So the project I'm presenting to you all today is a project that I worked in collaboration with Precision Biomonitoring. It's a speculative training kit for the water stewards or water warriors of 2050. So just like a brief intro to who I am. I'm basically a textile and conceptual artist. I work a lot in biomaterial research and storytelling around planet first principles. Yeah, just designing for more than human world. And that includes researching human to non-human interactions, emotional response to material, and using our senses to discern issues and solutions about environmental and climate change. Yeah, that's me. So Jay can maybe tell you a little about precision biomonitoring.
Okay, so precision biomonitoring was created by a group of scientists from the Biodiversity Institute at the University of Guelph back in 2016. Considered to be the gold standard, PBI has been a leader in the development of and practical applications of eDNA. Continues to offer industry-leading solutions to increasingly demanding issues of today, and our vision is to identify any organism on the planet anytime you need it.
Awesome. So yeah, so can you all hear me?
You can now. Go ahead.
Amazing. Sorry about that. So this project is a speculative project, and I just wanted to touch upon like what that really means and why that's important. So speculative future thinking is basically imagining potential futures, whether they're likely or unlikely, preferable, ideal, or super dystopian scenarios. And we think about the artifacts, people, systems, and media that will be in these possible futures. Basically to just try to break away from the trajectories that our linear thinking about the future can bring, and to try to decipher what probable or preferable futures we want to see, and sort of set that as a goal for like seeds. I think this is I'm coined term, but the seeds for good Anthropocene. So just thinking of ourselves as humans, as human beings, not as the like destroyers of the earth, but actually like as the stewards, and like projecting ourselves into a more symbiotic and empathetic space in the future. And what does that have to do with water conservation or the current state of our waters? As put here a little timeline. I'm not going to go into detail. Basically, we have been told and are being told by all kinds of scientists and activists for decades even, you know, that we will have sort of insurmountable water crisis by 2050 if our systems of production do not become less water intensive, from everything from like agriculture to fracking to nuclear power, increased urbanization, and pollution of water from waste processes. We just need to like really evaluate our ways of producing and sustaining a growing population. So although the prospects around this water accessibility and healthy marine ecosystems seem really grim when we look at all of these statistics here, there are a lot of great ways that people are taking into action to create like more biocompatible systems, like help afforestation, rewilding ecosystems, introducing native species, and using renewable energy from like even water currents. So yeah, so what does this have to do with ancient future tech? Basically, I wanted to create a project merging these water stewardship tools for the future for 2050. So projecting on some of these themes around water and what I would like to see the future, a more caring future for our water commons look like. I decided to send a message from the year 2021 to the water stewards of the year 2050 and give them a glimpse into the species that currently reside in our lakes at this point in time. I was in the bioregion of Lake Ontario in Canada. So the training kit for these young water conservationists is meant to explain biodiversity, water health, and the tools available to help them create planetary change. And this was sort of the sort of sci-fi idea of what like 2050 will look like. Yeah, trying to make like a seed bank from environmental DNA, which we will get into a little bit deeper in this conversation, for the water stewards of 2050. Perfect. So I just briefly will gloss over this. This is just like how the actual design of the piece, which is a pendant where there's a vial of environmental DNA stored to be preserved like a time capsule for these water stewards of 2050, containing information about species in Lake Ontario today, to be analyzed and compared in 2050, just to see like what we've done right, what we've done wrong, what has changed. Yeah, just keeping it as like almost a snapshot or a snapshot in time of now, and yeah, like a message in a bottle for 2050. And this was the actual like aesthetics or design based on the surface geometry of DNA. This was the actual piece that was then 3D printed and cast in silver. And that little sort of orb at the bottom that you see that's more clear is where the vial is, the actual glass vial with the eDNA that was extracted and kept in this like double sealed sterling silver pendant. And here's a picture of what that looked like. And yeah, so the idea is like, how can these prototypes and these speculative artifacts let us have a deeper conversation about water health and stewardship? What can they let us imagine about the futures that we want to see? So yeah, I'll let you think about that. And Jay will actually run us through a little bit more of the details about what environmental DNA means and the processes to extract and analyze that.
Absolutely. So what is eDNA? Short for environmental deoxyribonucleic acid. eDNA is the genetic material that is shed by an organism into the environment. So whether that be through skin, eggs, waste, gametes, mucus, scales, anything that can be shed, dropped, or left behind. So similar to like a perpetrator leaving DNA at a crime scene through sweat or saliva, it's the specific signature that is left behind in the environment. So what we can do is we can collect the sample of the environment itself instead of the species, extract the DNA and compare it to known sequences unique to that target species, thereby determining its presence or absence from the sample location. So next slide. So there are a couple different approaches, or a few different approaches, I should say, when it comes to using eDNA. So the most common is what's called qPCR, or short for quantitative polymerase chain reaction, as well as metabarcoding. So qPCR is where one or a few species are targeted for detection. Species-specific assays are designed using specific primers and probes, and qPCR rapidly multiplies copies of the target DNA, and these copies are measured for amplification. If the samples amplify the target DNA, the target species is noted as present, and vice versa. Then there's metabarcoding. This is essentially where all species can potentially be detected within each sample. All DNA sequences captured are identified in the sample by comparing them to known DNA sequences. Now, these sequences for metabarcoding are sequences cataloged in various databases, and universal primers are used to amplify these species. And this is where multiple spatial samples can be taken and entire species distributions can then be cataloged.
Thank you. Thanks. So for this project, we decided to target, sorry, there's a like noise in the background, but for this project, we decided to target a couple of different species, which we're still analyzing from samples of Lake Ontario. So we decided to target an indicator species and an invasive species. For Lake Ontario specifically, we looked at the Atlantic salmon and the zebra mussel. So in the last decade, there has been a big movement to repopulate the native Atlantic salmon in the waters of Lake Ontario. Salmons are an amazing marker for water health. They are part of a very intricately connected web of biodiversity. They feed us humans, they feed other land animals like bears and other larger marine species. And they come into contact from their trajectory from the sea, from the ocean into lakes with like 137 different types of biodiversity or species. So they're a huge food source, really important food source, and without them, our lakes would change dramatically. So we use them as an indicator species population and monitoring them over time to see, to evaluate the health of our waters. And we can almost say the opposite about the zebra mussel or even the quagga mussel populations. In this case, we use zebra mussel DNA, but we use them as an invasive species marker. They can be really harmful to native ecosystems when found in large densities, and they outcompete other filter feeders, causing decline in plankton and other marine microorganisms, which are the base of the marine food chain. So they starve out competitors. And this is why we decided to pick these two species and analyze both of these species through barcoding methods that Jay just discussed to give us a glimpse into our efforts of rewilding species and the health of our marine food chain. We can use this data to create a collective bioregional action to sustain a healthy ecosystem. So what do I mean by that? I mean the importance of safeguarding environmental DNA or this environmental data for our future ancestors. Basically, we can speculate that since most certainly our water bodies by 2050 will be very different, these species might have really different population numbers, or this biodiversity will have really changed. We can use this information in the future as like a library or an archive to determine what, why, or how environments have changed, and perhaps even preserve DNA from species that may no longer sadly exist in 2050. So I talked a lot about methods of being present with or staying with the trouble, and also at the same time talked a lot about like projecting ourselves into the future or unimagined worlds based on our perceptions of the present that we're living around water crisis. So here's where I merge these two worlds in this kind of talk of ancient future tech and reclaiming ancestral knowledge through water stewardship. So although environmental DNA seems like a really emergent technology, and it is in many ways, I also want to highlight the importance of recognizing and reclaiming collective ancestral knowledge of water stewardship. Our ancestors, as well as indigenous peoples worldwide, understand that water is life, and it was our first environment from which we crawled out as bacteria and fungi and began to merge and collaborate to create this land world we inhabit. So for that reason, water is sacred and should be cared for through collective efforts. We really truly have one true planet or one true ocean, and our waters are all deeply interconnected. When I say we have one planet or we have one ocean, I mean like we, people, ecosystems, and biodiversity. So water is an inherent right, and it should be passed on undiminished and intact for our future kin. So I want to call out to everybody to connect to this ancestral or ancient tech, to be present, and to stay with the trouble at hand, to use your senses, to keep us grounded in what needs to happen in the now, to allow space for a greater future to emerge. Yeah. So this is another little call to action based on that. All this technology seems sometimes really, if you're not a scientist like myself, I'm an artist, so you know I use some of these techniques in my practice to really bring these like very cutting edge tools that we can use to safeguard our ecosystems and our biodiversity, and to make just a greater future for ourselves to a wider audience that might not find that accessible otherwise through academia. So I just want to point out that everyone can be a scientist. The world needs place-based people to be observing, analyzing, and reporting data, and to monitor the health of our environments. So citizen scientists can monitor water quality in nearby watersheds, like through the same method that we were just speaking of, water sampling for eDNA in your own bioregion. You can reach out to Precision Biomonitoring if you like and ask more about that process. Or you can also make a group about plastics collection or microplastics collection sampling using micromeshes or any other kinds of pumps. There are many out there, and there are also a lot of resources to use, like open source or DIY sampling pumps. You can learn yourself about DNA barcoding using open source info. You can, again, reach out to Precision Biomonitoring or check out Mini PCR or Hackeria to make your own if you're really that invested. Also join an Indigenous water ceremony in your community. It's super important to safeguard our waters, especially in the areas where the most marginalized people are and the most pollution and waste are normally deviated towards. And yeah, lots of resources. So I definitely encourage everybody to just become more active in stewardship of our bioregions. Thanks. And yeah, there's a little video, but I won't play it because it's quite long. So check it out on Vimeo. It's called Water Warriors. And that's it. I'll stop share there.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was amazing. That was amazing. So glad that your internet held up for us and you could join us. Questions, my dear attendees. Is there anything that you'd like to know that comes to mind? I think, Catherine, you've already inspired some of us to ask for a speculative design workshop next year at BioSummit, so perhaps you'd like to be involved with that or even lead it for us.
Yes, I would love that, definitely.
Sarah, did you want to
doing this collection, so definitely look into it. It's not just water. You can do, you know, soil sampling in your area. Jay was just talking to me about air sampling methods as well, which I think is quite mind-blowing to me, to be able to capture environmental DNA from air. So,
Sarah,
cool.
did you want to? Sorry, this bit of a. Sarah, did you want to mention anything on that before I move on to Sequoia's question?
About what?
Just a speculative design workshop.
Oh yeah, I think it's such a good idea because I realized like there's this like theme of speculative design mentioned in a lot of talks this year, and I think it's such. I've ran speculative design workshops before, but it was mostly like mainly the people who attend are people with the design backgrounds who know what speculative design is and are interested in the process. But I think there was this interest in BioSummit as well. So I think there is room for doing speculative design workshops specifically for scientists next year. And if Catherine is interested, we should keep in touch and make it happen.
Always interested, yes, please. Keep me in the loop.
Thank you. So Sequoia, if you're here and can turn on your microphone, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I like the speculative design as well. Great idea, Sarah. And my question is, do you know how long the eDNA will last in the capsule? Do you have any, has Jay done any science behind that? Or I know like mRNA doesn't last very long, but how long does DNA last?
Yeah, Catherine, maybe I'll take that one. So a few different factors play into it. So being independent, one of them is UV exposure. Other is temperature, to make sure obviously the seal is well in hand. So we do have some speculation saying that it could be upwards of about 20 years. I mean, the ideal situation is to have it obviously cataloged in like either -40, -20, or -80 freezers for a long period of time, and that's pretty much indefinitely. But as far as the pendant is concerned, we haven't tested it obviously, so I can't say for sure. Yeah, the ideal situation is you would almost have. Yeah, you would almost have like for every every DNA sample that you have in a penny, you would kind of have another one in a freezer as well.
I'm kind of imagining us as like elven creatures, and we're wearing these jewelry items that are harboring, our genetic information that we want to pass on, but it's like a little treasure.
Yeah.
Catherine, did you want to add? Sorry, thank you, Jay. Thank you so much. Catherine,
I was just going to say, I love the idea, just marrying the art with the science. And I mean, I know this is a lot of what I think the Bio Summit is about, but yeah, Catherine, I think has done a wonderful job of kind of bringing that together.
Catherine, is there anything you'd like to add before I move on to Sarah's question?
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Sarah, please, if you're able to turn your microphone on, please ask your question.
Yeah, so this is just inspired by what Sequoia just asked about how long can we actually preserve this DNA inside the objects. And I was working on a project like a couple of weeks ago, and the basis of it was this paper that was published in Nature, I think 2 years ago. It's called DNA of Things. And it's a method to embed DNA oligos, storing digital data inside DNA and kind of embedding that into everyday objects. So, and I think that allows you to preserve it for a lot longer, and it also allows for UV protection. Just wanted to mention and put it out there. I don't know if you guys came across that or not.
I haven't actually heard of that. I'm going to look into that. Thanks for that.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, I initially was looking into that. I wanted to make the project so that it would be like just a digital file made in, like coded into binary, and then binary into aminos and to base pairs, and then that printed synthetically, then kept in the capsule. And then I was like, things happen for some reason, synchronicity, and it ended up being this amazing exploration into environmental DNA, which I'm really think is very important that we all start to invest more time in collecting this data for the future. We don't know what we will lose as far as like biodiversity, and like we don't really even know why. Sometimes there are like certain genomes in specific species that we don't really know why they're there, but they're there for a reason, right? So to have that information, I think is really important. It's going to give us like a bigger picture. Yeah.
I agree.
Dimitri's kindly put the link to the article in the chat so people can look at that. Thank you, Dimitri. Any more questions before we move on? Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you, Jay. It was a very inspiring talk. You can see how much interest and discussion you've inside. So ngā mihi for your contribution. So Christopher, over to you, my friend.
Hello, all right. So let me pull this up, one moment.
Thanks for your patience, speakers, with the slightly wonky schedule.
Not a problem at all. Just happy to be here. So let's see. Can you see this?
Yes. Great. Yes, thank you.
Great. So this talk is a bit of like a philosophical talk rather than a science talk. And it's kind of like a tour through some of the what is being lovingly referred to as solar punk right now. And so it's these ideas of taking synthetic biology and what kind of world can we build with that. And so at the very end, I have all of the I have a list of the references, so there's a link to that. And so the name of the talk is referring to stepping in shepherd's shoes is more about as referring to it's a good connection with the previous three talks, and is a shepherding of the planet and where do we want to see our future. And so this is really about like if we're going to build a future with synthetic biology. What kind of future do we want to see? And so there's been discussion of what people have been calling post-scarcity and the post-scarcity future. And so this is kind of funny. I just wanted to throw this in here. In 90, I forget the date was, but 97, I think, Wired published this article called The Long Boom, and they predicted 10 different predictions that they expected that they thought might throw. So it was like they were predicting 25 years of uninterrupted growth in the future. And they predicted 10 things that could throw that off. And I think 3 of them were sort of relevant in that a major ecological crisis could disrupt our growth, an uncontrollable plague, how fitting, and social and cultural backlash, which I think the state of the world is agitated, and there's a lot going on. So and so what I thought, when I look at this though, I see, rather than doom and dread, I see opportunity in using synthetic biology to as this up and coming technology to help kind of like fix the world's problems and address them in that manner. And so one of the things that I think is really important that they said is human beings need to choose to move forward, and they just may not. And so this is kind of the theme that I wanted to go with this, was that it's our responsibility. No one's coming to save us. We have to move on our own. We can't. It's been a long 2 years of sitting in our apartments and suffering. But to get past these challenges, we have to do it ourselves. And so this is just kind of hope for the future. And so the question is, so people have been talking about this post-scarcity civilization. Well, what is a post-scarcity civilization? And how do you define that? And if you define it as a set of rules, well, then once you achieve that, are you content? Or do you then set your sights further? For example, we are, give me a second. So we are I would argue, a post-scarcity civilization relative to, say, 200 years ago. But that I'm proposing you have to look at it through the lens of 3 different metrics. And that's like an absolute metric, meaning that something has been achieved and now it is solved and the world is better for it. For example, light bulbs. In the past, there were oil lamps and then light bulbs, and now we can see. An evolving metric, something like health or lifespan. And so, if your lifespan at 200 years ago was, say, 40 years, maybe a post-scarcity civilization in the future, you might envision a world where 80 years of life is exceptional, and that's the best thing you can think of. But then when you get there, you say, well, okay, so maybe there's more to strive for. And then a newly considered metric. So something that was never considered in the past, that because of events that came up in the future, is now being considered as something new. So for example, the pandemic leading us to think, whereas in the past, of course, there were plagues in the past, but let's say, I don't know, 30 years ago, but we weren't thinking about these things. That wasn't on our horizon. But now we're trying to build a world where we can prevent these things from happening again. And so, for example, in 1821, the post-scarcity light, what is enough light? What is post-scarcity being? You have so much that there's enough to go around. There's so much that everybody has as much as they want. Well, in oil lamps, that was a problem, and now we have electric light bulbs. Communication, we have the internet now. Transportation, you can go anywhere in the world on a car, on a plane, or drive on a car. Health, we think about our health today, but much less so in terms of life or death. If we get sick, we have antibiotics. We have these incredible new mRNA vaccines that are essentially programmable upgrades, right? Sequence programmable. Food and water. In 1821, that was the potato famine. People were dying from hunger. Of course, this is still a problem, but we have tap water and we have grocery stores and we have all of this, we live in a society that was only imaginable in their dreams back then. And then of course in energy, what are we going to see in the future? So the question is, what is, if we are a post-scarcity civilization, and I would argue that we could be considered one, to the past, then what is one to us? And so my when I was writing this, I had to change the talk a little bit from the abstract I proposed, because I realized I wasn't actually qualified to write this speech, because this is something that the world decides as a whole. I can give a list, and that's what I am going to do here. It's more, but it's going to be much more of like, you know, a vision, my own personal, what I'd love to see in the future. But this is a collective thing, and should be discussed as a society. And so I think the best case scenario in response to a talk like this would be somebody else someday giving a response talk and saying, you know, I see what you were going for, but I think that this might be better, or this you didn't even touch about this. Well, we can make the world better this way, and this could be a conversation from so many different directions. So then, what is a post-scarcity society? It's whatever lives at the end of the rainbow, because you can't catch it, but that doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing. So what is one to us? Okay, so the metaverse. What is the post-scarcity version of the internet? Maybe the metaverse. I say because maybe we should watch that closely. Maybe that's not as good as we think it is. Transportation. We've got Mach 5 passenger jets coming out soon. We'll have interplanetary travel in the future. Health. Rather than thinking about, oh, what antibiotics are available, how do we treat disease? What do I need to ask my doctor about? What do I need to go get checked out? It's just going to be, we're just living happy lives. We're not really thinking about our health, because our health is so taken care of by the technologies we've built, fundamental technologies that the world shares. As a society, we don't think about our health. And then food and water. You know, someday food will just be grown available. It'll be here for you. It'll be growing in the corner of the room. It'll be growing in your backyard. And water will be available all over the planet, because we'll have biological systems that can take, that can filter. It can filter river water. It could pull water directly out of the atmosphere and distill that and make it available. And so then the post-scarcity time, post-scarcity domain and range, public health, because of COVID, I would say, and climate change and equity are things that we really haven't considered in the past, that we are now beginning to consider for the first time. What kind of future do we want to see in terms of that? And so I leave equity alone. I leave that to the better hands of my peers to address that question. But for the rest, I try to walk through a little bit. And so a picture of the future. What is our health look like in the future? Well, it is, we're engaged and we're living our life better. And we, like I said before, we really don't think about it. We just our houses take care of us, and our we, you know, in our food is instilled all of the drugs that we need, and that's recognized by the systems around us that are monitoring our health all the time. And so just the world around us is our physician. We don't taken care of. We have sequence programmable vaccines, mRNA vaccines. Actually, interestingly, one of the collaborators in my lab, one of our collaborators in my lab has some data of a sequence programmable antibiotic, which is going to be published in bioRxiv in the near future. So that's something on the horizon. And so these are just things that are going to affect our life so much that we won't even know they're affecting our life, because it'll just be a fundamental, this is easy living. But so then the question is, of course, when you get here, then what becomes the next problem? But then, so what other aspects of the future do we want to see? Do we want to see a future where we're actually engaging in wind power? We're actually engaging in solar power. We have manipulated plant systems to be able to take their excess photosynthetic production and then deliver that down the roots as an electrical burst. And then that connects to, say, a mycelium network that is covering the planet, that's conductive and spreads the electricity of the excess plants and the excess, and so say solar energy and these wind energies, they just needle a thread right down into the dirt and just deliver electricity directly from the mycelium. And if you need power, you just plug it into the dirt and you've got power. How will we envision energy in the future is the question. How will we envision our homes, our domain, the planet itself, where as we move on in the future, will we grow our homes from seeds? Will it be completely free to grow home? And as we do so, as we spread out, the cities we build will be these organic structures that stretch around the world in ways that they can't today, because today we build them by necessity. We build them by city planning. In the future, without having to think about what cost it takes to build a home here and versus here, and the zoning laws, we just throw a seed down, you have a home. How will cities change in the future? And these are things that the best scientists of our generation are thinking about now. How do you take a seed? How do you take a plant? And how do you take wood and engineer wood to maybe break symmetry in a particular way so that it grows this way, and then maybe you break symmetry in the opposite direction so that it forms this roof and covering, and you've got a staircase, this oscillator, and breaking symmetry over and over again. And so you're programming these beautiful natural materials to do what you want, and once the code's been written, it replicates. It's free.
So Chris, sorry, we're relatively close to time. I just encourage you to wrap up if you're not already on your road to wrapping up.
No problem.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So, and what are we going to see there in the future? Our cities stretch on forever, and we'll have space to grow because of this. Maybe we'll see the climate will be affected by our ability to control algal blooms. But this is a checklist that I encourage us to think about. We want to eradicate COVID. These are things that we think we can do. Eradicate COVID. We can reverse climate change. We can power a grid with biological systems, these exponential systems, and maybe we can settle Mars, and we can use that back and forth to build a better civilization. And so this is just a tour through the future of what people other than myself have hoped the future will look like. And I think that we have now the technology to address and make our way toward and live a beautiful future among the stars, as a society that shares back and forth. And we make we particularly never abandon the earth. The earth is our cradle. It is our home forever. And will be, I expect, a paradise network that stretches across the universe with synthetic biology. So that's it. I just want to acknowledge, no problem. I just want to acknowledge some of the intellectual inspirations. And then if you want any of the art references, I put them in my Twitter bio. So there's a spreadsheet. Thank you.
So thank you. I'm Namihi, Chris.
Sorry about that.
Sequoia, did you want to pick up on your comment, or are you okay?
Well, I've done a lot of synthetic biology in the past 2 or 3 years, and it's really fun, and I see it as a great tool and endless possibilities. But I really don't think it's going to be the solution to all of our problems, and I feel like our definition of what a problem is could be controversial as well. Like, is who a problem for who? Right, exactly.
And it goes back to the other talks we were listening to. It's like, how do we build a better future without destabilizing the lives of the people who don't necessarily want to go that way?
Yeah, and not necessarily just humans either, like just all the other life out in Earth. Like we are with synthetic biology, we're changing the code within living organisms to grow and build for us. So I don't know, I feel like there's so much commentary like I could give on each slide. We could just go back and forth and have all kinds of dialogue.